No accusations are being made in this video. Anyone mentioned is being discussed based on publicly reported behavior or allegations, and they're all presumed innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law. And now, without any further ado, let's begin. Shane Dawson. Shane Dawson was once one of the most popular YouTubers on the platform. Though he continues to upload on YouTube to a decent amount of views, his long history of sexual misconduct, among other things coming to light, led to him getting demonetized. His most predatory actions include demonstrating sexual acts with toys to his 12-year-old cousin with his girlfriend while questioning her about her period on a live stream. He's also been accused of making rape threats, one of which was leveled by Neil Cicerega against him and the Fine brothers. Shane also filmed himself pretending to pleasure himself to 11-year-old Willow Smith, asked if his thing was showing while on a live stream with underage girls, asked a girl to eat a sausage for his audience of child molesters, and recorded her doing so, and just a whole laundry list of grooming behavior. These incidents have resurfaced multiple times over the years, most notably during the second era of the hashtag Shane Dawson is over party trending in 2020. It was this that led to his massive apology, which many have taken as a PR move rather than a genuine interest in healing. His apologies also rarely acknowledge the depth of some of his actions, even though his content has pivoted to a more family-friendly nature. It just doesn't change the fact that he's been filmed acting like a pervert for most of his career. Edward Muscare was born in New York City, 1932. He lived in the Big Apple for much of his life, serving as a local TV host from 1969 to 1981, playing a variety of characters. He went by the stage name of Uncle Ed and was best known as a horror host on various programs. For the kids, that's where someone presents horror movies when they air live on TV and gives facts or plays little games between commercial breaks, like Elvira and Joe Bob Briggs. His TV career came to an end when in 1986, he was charged with sexual battery against a 14-year-old boy. He received a rather light sentence of 18 months in prison, 10 years probation. It's unclear what he got up to during this time, but he made a triumphant return to entertainment when he created a YouTube channel in 2006 under the name Edward. His content is weird. I guess coming from the variety show background has led him to do a variety of things. You might have seen the video where he just sings Pretty Woman into the camera, as it has over 4 million views. Beyond that, it's a lot of vlogs, rants, more singing, and just getting his nasty teeth right up close with the camera. It's all very eerie and a bit gross. His comments are shut off, likely because people were brigading them due to his past coming out. It seems Ed enjoyed the feeling of being watched and entertaining audiences, but didn't want any of the caveats of fame and infamy. Edward faced more trouble with the law when he moved to South Carolina in 2010 without informing authorities of his sex offender status. Part of his sentence was that he wasn't allowed to use the internet, which I guess made more sense at the time before the internet may have been considered a necessity. Though he continued to make videos, having a friend upload them. The court still saw this as a breach of his sentencing, and he wound up being sentenced to prison for 5 years. Edward maintained that he didn't do anything wrong in this instance. Edward's wife, Marion, would continue to upload to his channel, singing and talking about her love for the man, as well as uploading some old tapes of Ed's old shows. Ed would die in prison of a benign tumor in January 2012. Ed was an entertainer to the core that did an awful thing, and still clearly had people who loved him and that he loved. His channel remains an interesting portrait of the life of a predator, showing that he was indeed a human, which is the most disturbing fact of all. Major Klug. Major Klug was a YouTuber and animator who had over 100,000 subscribers during his time on the site. His content centering around his Roblox avatar has largely been scrubbed from the internet, but you can take a look at his page on the Wayback Machine. There, you'll see that his videos ranged from shitpost content to classic animated rants. A lot of them also seem to center around furries and about murdering them. Seriously, someone made a 7-minute compilation of his animations where he just brutalizes furries for some reason, to the point that it seems like a fetish. So his videos were suspect in nature from the get-go, and they seemed straight out of 2007 Newgrounds, but with Roblox stuff for some reason. If they weren't fetishistic in nature, they seemed to rely a lot on shock humor. Around 2024, a few accusations of inappropriate conduct against Major Klug began getting thrown around, but it really hit the fan when his girlfriend, Madison aka hot_garbage, made a massive call-out document for Klug. Madison had met Klug, aka Ryan, when she was just 11 and he was 16 through his YouTube channel. They began dating on Discord after a few months and kept this relationship all the way until Ryan was 18 and she was 13. During this time, Klug would send sexual messages and solicit pictures from Madison, a literal child. When some rumors began flying about that he was involved with someone younger than him, the relationship soured and slowly turned from lovey-dovey to purely sexting. He also did sexual animations of Madison's self-insert character for her eyes only and admitted on multiple occasions to her that he was in fact a pedophile. He knew that what he was doing was wrong. Klug later broke off the relationship in November of 2020, fearing the consequences of his actions. Madison, who already had a history of abuse, apparently acted aggressive towards Ryan in the time after the breakup. Klug would quell her and keep her silent by promising to get back with her once she was older. All of this came to light in 2024 after accusations of grooming going on in Klug's Discord server, one of which was made in the form of a meme using a Worthy Kids video. This showed that Madison wasn't the only person Klug victimized. He was a serial pedophile starting at age 16 and continued this bad behavior into his 20s. Klug nuked his channel immediately, though some imitators did pop up, which you can ignore. His whereabouts are currently unknown, so let's hope he doesn't make any returns to YouTube. L for Lee. Lee Carson was a Minecraft Let's Player from back when they were called Let's Players. He played a character named Lee Bear in the long-running, semi-scripted Let's Play series Stampy's Lovely World, hosted on Stampy Longhead's channel. Stampy was, and still is, one of the most popular Minecraft YouTubers and had a large audience of children at the time. Lee was, by extension, a very popular character, especially with the kids, and his own channel had around 100,000 subscribers. In 2015, however, news broke that Lee, who was just a teenager, had engaged in disturbing sexual acts. The Daily Record and other news publications reported that he had broken into the home of a family friend and committed an inappropriate act which involved her underwear, before texting her about having done so. He also sent disturbing sexual messages to a teenage girl he knew through a burner account on Facebook, telling her that he was walking behind her in the street and her being unaware of his presence, and threatening her for illicit photos. He also sent her illicit photos of himself. All of this while running one and appearing in another YouTube channel for children. Lee was found guilty of his crimes. He did leave DNA in that one woman's house after all, but managed to avoid jail time, maybe due to his age. I've seen a lot of people report that he didn't go to prison because he didn't do anything, but that is not true. He admitted this stuff to Stampy and Squishy. He was found guilty of these things. He just got off with a slap on the wrist. He was given a sexual offense prevention order which forbade him from using the internet for a time. Needless to say, when news broke, Stampy was put into a complicated situation. He's been praised for his delicate handling, however, choosing to quietly sever ties with Lee before writing his character out of the Minecraft series naturally. This was a really painful thing for Stampy, his wife, and the rest of the channel. Lee had been a staple of their series and a close personal friend, but he had lied straight to their faces about these allegations and violated all of their trust. Lee somehow did upload to YouTube a few times over the years, not addressing the allegations until 2017. He denied any wrongdoing in this video, saying they were just rumors. But again, Stampy's wife Squishy addressed the Lee situation and affirmed that these things did happen. Lee was young when he acted upon these predatory urges, and it's possible for him to do some healing, but he failed to take accountability at the time, and there's no telling if he ever will. Cryotic. Cryotic was a massively popular gaming YouTuber that often collaborated with other gaming giants of 2010's YouTube, like PewDiePie and Jacksepticeye. So, the aim of this video is to explain these people's behavior in short, palatable segments, but Cry's actions make up such a long list of psychotic behaviors that all stemmed from some unchecked mental illness and fame being basically handed to the guy. Never a good combination. Cryotic's troubling behavior started with an affair between him and the girlfriend of his friend Russ, who was a fellow gaming streamer. At the time, this affair was mostly behind the scenes. Then one day, it turned out that Cheyenne, Cryotic's girlfriend in 2014, who he introduced via a video where they played Portal together, was 16 at the time. Before all that happens, however, we gotta go back to where all of Cry's predatory behaviors began getting exposed. On June 18, 2020, Twitter user Beanie made the first accusations in a now-deleted post against Cry, claiming he had been grooming her. This all came out about a week after he appeared to have a psychotic episode on livestream. Just 2 days after the allegations would come to light, Cry posted a short non-apology video called Cry Talks, We Stopped Being Genuine a Long Time Ago. A very strange title, and the video does its weirdness justice, but doesn't do justice to anything else. It reads more like one of his rants, which had been a stable part of his channel. As in these other rants, he lamented his unstable mental health and only mentioned once that he, quote, cheated on his girlfriend with people that he didn't know were underage, before continuing calling himself some lonely guy. It's a very self-serving apology, even though he constantly assures us he's not making an excuse. The dramatic pauses are serious eye rollers. His streaming partner Scott Junn also admitted that he knew Cry had been messaging a 16-year-old inappropriately, but continued to work with him. Evidence continued to pour out that Cry was a genuine pedophile. Another former friend of Cry's uploaded screenshots of a Discord conversation he had with Cry after the apology, where he likens the whole thing to a game of Secret Hitler. Like I said, there's a whole lot more evidence against him that has been summed up in longer form videos. Cry was definitely mounting some sort of comeback at one point or another, but must have backed down when he saw just how many people had turned against him. It seems that Cry was a genuine, manipulative abuser who has fortunately stayed off the internet since the fallout of his actions died down. Yes, he was clearly a victim of some abuse, so we can hope he gets help, but we cannot forget the people he victimized throughout his career. Ryan Haywood. Achievement Hunter was a once massively popular Let's Play channel under the Rooster Teeth banner. It followed several gamers across a wide variety of video games. Though they once had a loyal following, at the end of the channel's lifespan, it rarely even broke 100 views. This perhaps wasn't helped by the allegations leveled against one of its most prominent members, Ryan Haywood. Haywood joined the channel and the Rooster Teeth banner in 2011. He started out as an editor for the channel and others before starting to appear in videos in early 2012. He also began working as an animator on Rooster Teeth's flagship series, Red vs. Blue. Bryan was soon a core part of the Rooster Teeth family, moving full-time to Achievement Hunter, as well as hosting the podcast Glitch Please, and playing some characters in Rooster Teeth animated productions, like the aforementioned Red vs. Blue and Ruby. All Ryan had to do was just not be a shitty person to keep this upward mobility going, yet he couldn't manage that. In 2020, Ryan Haywood was accused of soliciting several young women for sex, including multiple that were under the age of consent at the time, including Tessa Graves and one woman who just goes by Michelle. Ryan was also accused by several adult parties of removing protection during intercourse without their consent, something that is considered assault. Michelle also noted that he was really rough with her during intercourse. Ryan used his online fame to manipulate several young girls into sex and then took far more than what was given. He was immediately dropped from the company. Achievement Hunter went live a week later to comment on the situation with host Jack Patillo. In his words, "It has been overwhelming and watching something we've built up be hit so hard, having no idea it was happening, being completely blindsided by it, and just going through the amount of emotions just of anger, sadness, rage, and guilt, and everything," he said. "I have to apologize to the community. I'm sorry we've let you down. I'm sorry this happened. Please understand how crushed we are too. Every single story, everything I've read, every report that's come out, it's a punch to the gut." Jason Christopher Hughes. In 2013, a Tumblr blog would be created entitled Surviving the Extinct Marsupial. The blog was introduced to the world with the following note. "Dear world, I am another victim of the stalker known as Jason. I cannot reveal my name and I have attempted to mask my identity to avoid inciting him. He has harassed me off and on for several years. He turned on me after I refused to help him with an activity I found questionable. That was all it took to find myself on his list. It is quite possible that he will start harassing me again as a result of what I've written here. I used to be friends with Jason. We had some good times. He was always very alpha male and didn't like to be questioned, but that was okay by me at the time because I was young and stupid and found his taste in activities edgy and cool. I thought he was a hacker, and that was interesting to me because I wanted to be a badass hacker too. I listened to him brag about his hacks. After he became more comfortable with me around, he also told me stories about all the horrible things he'd done to people, mostly women he dated. He has a weird thing for women named Vanessa and Rachel, when he felt abandoned or slighted by them. On several occasions, he explained to me how he was getting someone fired from their job, kicked off a project, or in trouble at their school by sending their peers spoofed emails. In these emails were creative diatribes alluding to incriminating situations involving the target, naked pictures he'd taken off the target, or even images uncomfortably close to, if not actually, child pornography. He used anything of intense shock value he thought would create social upheaval, even legal problems, for his targets. He worked from libraries, coffee shops, or open Wi-Fi, using other people's accounts. He stole accounts using identities collected about customers of his online businesses fronts, usually eBay accounts. He showed me how he used eBay to make money selling pirated ebooks and sheet music. I was bothered, but I was dumb and eager to learn, so I listened and tried not to judge. I imagined these people all deserved what they got. I even idolized him. But then I found myself in a position where I had to say no to him, and that's where I realized I'd made a big mistake. Later, after he'd been harassing me for some time for betraying him, I found others who were also dealing with his harassment. Some of them I even recognized from his stories. We got together and started comparing notes. Then more came forward because of some public posts some of us had made. Then even more. We began working together for some time, but it's slow going and frightening. Most of us won't go public, even anonymously, for fear of retribution. This blog was made in order to document Jason's crimes in a manner that would make it difficult for this cyberstalker to take it down. This letter would go on to explain that his victims were dealing with depression and anxiety, as well as having their images tainted by Jason's obsessive behavior. Additionally, it explains that it is difficult to get him charged with any crime due to Jason using spoof accounts to keep relative anonymity, and the fact that he will often threaten victims that speak out about his crimes to silence. Scrolling through the various tags, you'll find Jason's bizarre, obsessive behavior, including writing a fake review of author Rachel Monroe's book that he never read, assuming the names of some of his stalking victims, and of course, making creepy, veiled messages via email and Twitter. The blog indicates that these women were not random targets, but people that managed to anger Jason in some way. If you're wondering about the name, it's because one of Jason's aliases was Thylacine, after an extinct marsupial. Surviving Jason hasn't uploaded since 2013, so let's hope he just backed off once his crimes were publicized. Lulu Fitness. So this case happened in the Spanish-speaking world, and was thus very difficult to actually research. Googling the names leads to a lot of random people and dead links, so a lot of this information came from YouTuber Took Too Much's video on the topic, who does a lot of videos on crimes from Central and South America. Lourdes Espinosa Horna was a Peruvian fitness influencer that went by the name Lulu Fitness, and has a YouTube channel that is still open called Lulu Fitness. She was rather successful in both the social media and bodybuilding world. Lourdes would often appear in her videos scantily clad, which was ostensibly to show off her muscles. This wouldn't have been much of an issue if she didn't also begin bringing children into her videos. After her nephew appeared in one video and received a lot of attention from internet creeps, Lourdes began uploading videos of herself wrestling with her nephew with offers to purchase extended content in the descriptions of these videos. This was how Lourdes distributed child assault material out in the open. She would send the extended videos to anyone that offered enough money. This seems insane. Like, how could she have been blatantly doing this on YouTube and not get caught? Well, for 5 years, she didn't. She was only put on international law enforcement's radar in 2022 and arrested by local police in December of 2023. According to Took Too Much's video on the topic, she was awaiting trial as of 2024, but I can't find any updates to the case. Social media searches and news sites only yielded articles about her arrest, most of which came from December 2023. If any Spanish speakers might know if she received a sentence, please let us know. Justice needs to be served. The Daily Capper. The death of Amanda Todd was, for a long time, positioned as a cautionary tale about cyberbullying. You may have heard a lecture about it if you were a child when it happened. Though bullying is obviously terrible and can result in death, to say her death was cyberbullying is a bit of a misnomer. The entire story is somehow far more horrific. The incident where Amanda Todd was groomed into exposing herself on camera was submitted to a web show known as The Daily Capper. For all the talk of the deep web, we may forget that there are a long list of horrifying things that may have been and still are openly hosted on the surface web. Blog TV was an Israeli live streaming website that began in 2004 and was infamous for extremely lax regulation. For reference, Blog TV is where Keemstar first gained infamy and is the origin of his infamous clip where he called a fellow moderator named Alex the N-word. Not even close to the grossest thing to happen on the site, however. It was in a Blog TV stream that Amanda Todd was goaded into flashing to about 200 viewers. This led to her being blackmailed into sending more explicit videos and photos to the person who screenshotted the live stream. The blackmailer began sending the photos to her family and friends, which led to widespread harassment, physical assault, and her ending it. Amanda was a victim of what was called a capper, someone who would take these lewd photos of underage individuals in live streams. You would think these things would be hosted in shady corners of the world, hidden from prying eyes, but the Daily Capper proved otherwise. The Daily Capper used assets from the HBO show Crashbox to create an eerie news show where some unidentified monster rounded up videos and pictures of capping incidents into one big CP display, all on Blog TV. There are some reports the show was on YouTube, including in Nick Crowley's viral video on the topic, but it seems that it was on Blog TV from the media reports at the time. The show would run for just a few minutes in each episode and proudly boast about the young people that have been victimized by the pedophiles in their community. After the death of Amanda Todd, whose photos were featured in the Daily Capper, the anonymous producers released a statement that they were against her bullying and tried to distance themselves as being the cause of their death. According to Patrick McGuire of Vice, the Daily Capper released a video that implicated a man named Cody Maxson in the death of Amanda Todd, with emails that claimed that Amanda Todd asked them for help. However, this came 2 years after her death, meaning they held on to this evidence for all that time. This was clearly just damage control, which seems almost comical for a bunch of pedophiles to be doing. If you want a more comprehensive story, check Nick Crowley's video on this topic. Davi Vanity. Davi Vanity is one of the founding members of the music group Blood on the Dance Floor. The electronic scene band were an early adopter of internet fandom, with Davi leveraging their popularity on MySpace to interact with fans directly and promote their music. The issue with this era of internet celebrity was how unmoderated these fan interactions tended to be, and the fact that the world of emo and scene was very popular with children and preteens. This brings us to Jesse Leonhardt, or as you may have known them, Jesse Slaughter. If you were on the relentlessly mean-spirited side of the internet in 2010, you may recall a meme known as "You Done Goofed," where a hysterical girl and her father yell into a webcam in response to apparent cyberbullying. The cyberbullying aspect of the story is its own rabbit hole, but in short, the young child in the video, who now identifies as non-binary, is Jesse Leonhardt. Jesse Leonhardt had claimed to be in a sexual relationship with Davi at the time. This was met with vitriol by the wide web, as she was doxxed by 4chan hackers and the victim of constant harassment, enough that their home was placed under police surveillance. This video was made in response to the cyberbullies, which ultimately just put fuel on the fire, and the worst part is, it seems she wasn't even lying. Leonhardt met Davi, real name Jesus David Torres, on MySpace in 2009, before meeting him in person at a party in Florida, around the time he was just starting to take off in the electronic music scene. They kept in touch, and in a recent interview with Business Insider, Leonhardt maintains that Davi began molesting her at the age of 10. This was around the time Leonhardt discussed their relationship, as she called it, with classmates, which led to the rumors spreading online, spiraling her into massively publicized cyberbullying. During this time, Vanity even released a song named after the video meme in a massive display of arrogance. This existence of this song also sort of seems to implicate Vanity's bandmate and producers. It's unclear how long Davi Vanity continued to molest Leonhardt, but she went more public with the accusations around 2018. By that time, dozens of other women and girls had already accused him of predatory behavior. Davi Vanity denies the accusations to this day, but there's way too many to really deflect. Also, his music sucks. The 4chan Drone Stalker. Based on the date, I think this was posted on October 4th, 2020, but maybe it's in European dating. Either way, this 4chan post was made during the height of COVID lockdown. The poster asks, "Is this dude wearing a full face mask inside?" posting a photo of what looks like a creep shot of some random couple. The mask was clearly a skincare mask. Anyhow, commenters question him about why he was taking photos of random people. The OP soon admits that the woman pictured is an Instagram influencer and that he's been following her. When another commenter reprimands him for standing on their porch, OP then responds that he's not on their porch, but is in fact taking photos with a drone. He included an image from the Instagram influencer he's been following that was posted to her Instagram story. In all archives of this post, her name and face are blurred, and I will leave it that way. Anyway, it seems pretty apparent this isn't a hoax, as many have pointed out you can clearly see the reflection of the stalking drone in the original photo. It's unclear if anything ever came of this incident. Haim Cohen. I will 100% treat any family-based social media channel with suspicion. People posting their kids' lives on the internet is dangerous on its own. Haim Cohen took this to another level. If you go to TikTok right now, you can find a username called Our Unique Family. On the account, you will find hundreds of videos depicting what look to be some Orthodox Jewish kids, making memes, skits, dance videos, and little vlogs. Parent figures are suspiciously absent from these videos. Look at the profile photo and you can spot the caretaker of these adoptive kids in the back of the group portrait. That is Haim Cohen, as he came to call himself. Haim Cohen claimed to be a born Hasidic Jew from New York and Jerusalem who was fluent in Yiddish and felt a calling to adopt a whole lot of Orthodox Jewish children. In reality, Haim was born Jeffrey Lujan Vegel, and he didn't speak a lick of Yiddish. He wasn't an ethnic Jew, despite what he claimed. It's also clear he didn't just adopt these boys out of the goodness of his heart. At one point, his foster home was full up of 9 adoptive boys plus foreign exchange students. Reportedly, his adoptive kids weren't ethnically Jewish either. Haim actually had their names changed, which was just the beginning of his cult leader-like behavior. Haim would fake disabilities and illness for sympathy points, which helped him get out of jail when he was first placed on trial for molesting a foreign exchange student. For the record, it seems this trial was still ongoing while he was making these TikToks and YouTube videos with his children. He just wasn't jailed. It's unclear how many of his children he abused, given some of them actually supported him during his trials. What is known is that one of his children, unnamed, actually attempted to run away at one point, but was forced to go back by CPS, who disregarded his claims at first. They were only taken seriously when another one of his adoptive children called into a live podcast called Blind Skinned Beauty, hosted by a woman named Twaya Paines. Twaya reported it to police and they managed to track the boy to his location, where Haim was arrested and 6 boys rescued. Haim Cohen went to trial for the sexual abuse of the 6 boys and one of his foreign exchange students from Spain soon after, where his entire persona started to unravel. Haim, who was once beloved by the local Jewish community, was revealed as a manipulative liar who couldn't back up any of his stories and had been living off of donations from his social media accounts, despite his claims of wealth. You know, I saw some anti-Semitic comments in one of the news reports on Haim, which is completely unfounded, considering the guy didn't even go to Shabbat, despite claiming to be a rabbi. He wasn't a Jew, so don't be hateful. After a lengthy trial that began all the way back in February 2023, Haim has been charged with several counts of sexual abuse that totaled up to a sentence of 135 years as of April 2025. It is believed that some of the older adopted kids that supported Haim may have also participated in the abuse, but no charges have been brought against them and their identities are being protected. Big props to Twaya and the people at Blind Skin Beauty for doing what needed to be done. And what a relief that he's finally been sentenced. I remember this case when it first broke. Still, there's no giving back the time lost to the kids who were abused by Haim. Their faces plastered all across the internet, forever tied to this horrifying story. Galveston Roblox Predator. Roblox was once known as an online virtual platform for children to create, share, and play user-generated games. Released by David Baszucki and Eric Cass in 2006, its kid-friendly legacy endures, given it won a Kids' Choice Award for Best Video Game in 2025. Though if you just head on over to the website, it won't take much scrolling to find a slew of inappropriate content, which is only natural in an online space. If you go on Roblox, though you'll find plenty of kid-friendly games, you might also be met with violent horror games, military themes, fetish fuel, and, most troubling, games with names like Escape Epstein Island. These are definitely meant to be jokes, but they don't really belong in a space where there will be kids, especially one with a PEGI 7 rating. Roblox has, unsurprisingly, faced numerous controversies over the years. It's hard to avoid them when you're one of the biggest games on the internet. There is some age restriction, but it's easy enough to get around that I don't recommend you let your kids play Roblox. there's unfortunately not a lot of safe, child-friendly online games out there right now. The latest lawsuit against Roblox is one of the most disturbing. In May of this year, it was reported that a woman was filing a lawsuit against the company, alleging that her daughter had been raped by a man she met on Roblox. The suit cites Roblox as negligent, holding them responsible for the girl's assault. The story goes that the unidentified girl had become addicted to the app since age 10 and had encountered multiple predators during her time there. One person threatened to self-harm if she didn't give her Discord over, which she did. This user then sent the girl a graphic video of a man shooting himself in the head. The girl then met a man who claimed to work as a counselor on Roblox, who gained her trust as she confided in him the awful things she saw. At some point in 2024, the fake counselor traveled to the girl's house where he filmed himself molesting her. He was later seen walking the girl by her mother and arrested. All parties are currently John and Jane Doe's while this trial is underway. So, is Roblox to blame here? Well, yeah, kinda. There just straight up shouldn't be kids on a site like that, but it's very difficult to regulate. So, some of the blame absolutely falls upon the mom, who apparently didn't restrict Roblox when her daughter became addicted to it, just tried to filter the chat. Still, sites like Roblox have a responsibility towards their target demographic of young children, but they are constantly failing them. David Tatum. The problems with generative AI should have been blatantly obvious to anyone paying attention to the deep fake craze. If you create a computer that can make whatever you ask of it, people are going to ask some awful things of it. David Tatum is, or was, a child psychologist from Charlotte, North Carolina. In May of 2023, he was charged with CP ownership. Not only did he secretly record one of his patients undressing, but he had been taking photos of children from online databases and his own files, and using generative AI to undress them in their pictures. One attorney said, as a child psychiatrist, Tatum knew the damaging, long-lasting impact sexual exploitation has on the well-being of victimized children. Regardless, he engaged in the depraved practice of using secret recordings of his victims to create illicit images and videos of them. Tatum also misused artificial intelligence in the worst possible way, to victimize children. Today's 40-year sentence underscores our efforts to do all we can to bring justice to child victims. As the field of artificial intelligence advances, my office is committed to prosecuting predators who seek to exploit this technology to inflict harm on children. It's unclear which AI program he used, but it was apparently a web-based one. With the influx in AI programs explicitly made to generate creepy things, like videos of people making out, it's no surprise that there are some that appeal to child predators. Shouldn't that AI program be culpable in this case? They built a program that can independently generate CSAM. It's not like a drawing tablet or a photo editing tool. The computer made the image, not the user. As far as I can tell, there's been no other arrests in this case besides David. Nathan Bryan. In April 2014, a Bradenton police detective posed as a father in response to a Craigslist ad offering babysitting services. Nathan Alexander Bryan had spent the last 14 months offering his babysitting services through the site. This raised alarm bells for police as he was already a registered sex offender against minors. The detective had to play a very disturbing role. As he put it, I assumed the undercover profile of a bad dad in his 40s who was looking for an adult male to engage in disturbing acts with his 8-year-old stepson in the Bradenton, Sarasota, Florida area. This sting operation wasn't immediate. The detective had to collect months' worth of text evidence communicating back and forth with Bryan until June 19th, 2 months later. Communication with Bryan stopped for a while after he expressed interest in moving to Orlando to take up the undercover detective's offer. Bryan had said he'd lost his phone, but he was now interested in meeting up. On June 21st, a successful sting at a Starbucks left Bryan in handcuffs. Police had been monitoring his activity for 14 months and finally had him. That's 14 months he had been posing as a babysitter online. In February of 2016, Bryan would wind up being sentenced to life imprisonment for soliciting a minor, with an additional charge of producing CP being slapped on. Too Mad. Mudea Sedik, known online as Too Mad, was a once beloved YouTube comedian and live streamer. Too Mad rose to prominence pre-pandemic as clips of him snowballed into becoming viral memes. By the 2020 pandemic, when conference calls became the norm, he carved out a niche of pranking these random calls with obnoxiously loud noises, racial caricatures, and other means of zombooning. His pranks became premium entertainment for a lot of people during the COVID pandemic, to the point where he had over 2 million subscribers at his peak popularity, and was hanging out with other content creators like Belle Delphine, and most prominently to this story, Jameski. After a few years of Too Mad's cringe humor, it evolved into shock humor, then into flat-out racism and transphobia. In June of 2023, after a long series of deranged posts that showed a damaged mental state, he posted a photo of hate crime victim Brianna Gay, who was 16 at the time of her death, calling her his girlfriend. Then, accusations of sexual misconduct were leveled against Too Mad by a cosplayer who went by Goldie Bell, who posted screenshots of the conversations Too Mad had with her on Discord and called him the most psychopathic person I've ever fucking known. She claimed he stalked her for 7 months after she blocked him. Too Mad spiraled into deranged rants amid this and other allegations, defending or denying his behavior on Twitch and Twitter wherever he was pressed. He threw around words like cancel culture and accused Goldie of being insecure and wanting attention, never really doing anything to help his case. Too Mad would continue to operate at this deranged level for the next 8 months, with his behavior becoming increasingly erratic in the time leading up to February 2024, when it all went silent. On the 13th, during a welfare check, Mudea was found dead of what would later be confirmed to be a morphine overdose. He was 23. The next day, YouTuber Jameski came out with further allegations against Too Mad, calling him a rapist and pedophile, and stating that he'd been working with police on an investigation into his hate crimes. He stated that he'd kept quiet this whole time as Too Mad had threatened to murder him and others while driving under the influence. Jameski would then post a 52-page document detailing all the evidence he had against Mudea and the police investigation he'd been working on. In the tell-all doc, Too Mad alludes to stealing guns, references in a psychosis that indicates he can't remember if he'd committed sexual assault, threatens doxing, actually doxes, threatens murder, attempts murder at TwitchCon, and more. His crimes are almost too numerous to name beyond the document. Too Mad still has legions of defenders who went out of their way to harass Jameski and other people he victimized. Apparently, since he's dead, it's wrong to call him out in these guys' minds, who are definitely suspicious too. Shows just how venomous the internet can be. Guitar Hero Styles. Too Mad cannot make videos anymore, as he is in fact dead. Some YouTube predators are still fully capable of producing content and maintaining their entertainment career though. Guitar Hero Styles, aka Advi Styles, is a gaming YouTuber who pivoted from Guitar Hero to Geometry Dash in 2014, which is where he really found his niche. He was known for completing some of the most difficult user-made and official levels in the game after hours of dedication. Millions of viewers flocked to watch him click that cube around the colorful levels. It is a genuine spectacle to see someone lock in so hard on a game that requires one single button and some reflexes. Advi's channel currently sits at over 4 million subscribers. At one point while on stream, Advi was even hospitalized for heart palpitations that likely came from a combination of his poor health and intense gaming. His dedication garnered him a massive following and several other YouTuber friends. However, in 2021, his persona would come into question when Twitter user Pan uploaded a damning thread that included screenshots and a paste bin of testimony against Advi. The first round of Discord screenshots where Advi called a 14-year-old all manners of cute were damning on their own. The paste bin, however, was just straight horrifying. It's worth noting that these are anonymous allegations made against Advi, but it's one of those situations where many people have a story about this guy. The victim explains that Advi got very close to her, very quickly, and began to trauma dump vent within a few days of them meeting. They quickly got into a relationship, but sexual and emotional abuse started up very quickly. The accused claimed that Advi never took no as a response. He would force himself upon her while she was crying and display narcissistic, controlling behavior even when he wasn't sexually abusing her, making his word law. During this time, he would follow a lot of women on social media and very few men, constantly hopping on Discord to VC with other women too. The victim eventually broke it off with Advi, and for a time, he went silent before re-emerging in her life, begging for her to take him back and implying that he would end it. His victim reported that all he would talk about in this period of contact was sex and a YouTuber called Juniper that he worked with at the time. Juniper would later cut contact with Advi and post some text conversations she had that further incriminated him. Advi's initial apology was pretty weak, especially considering it included SA accusations. He made some more rounded apologies on Twitter and YouTube, while hashtag AdviOut trended and people like streamer Luna posted more incriminating messages he sent. These messages have been deleted from Twitter as Luna scrubbed her account, but there are some screenshots out there. Luna was 17 at the time. After a few days, though, people just kind of moved on. His own geometry dash levels were removed, but Advi just made his apologies and went right back to making content. He denied ever making physical contact with a minor, but the fact that he demonstrated an attraction to minors and that his enduring audience is full of kids is real concerning. Gary Ryan. Though many sex offenders do genuinely try to heal, the sex offender registry is important for a lot of reasons. If someone's behavior raises red flags, the registry can be a valuable tool. This was the case in the incident that led to the arrest of Gary Ryan. When an unnamed boy from Wake County, New York, told his parents that he was going to meet a man he'd met online at a sports memorabilia convention, they were reasonably alarmed. Apparently, he'd been talking to this man on and off for 6 months in sports collectors forums and Instagram. The 14-year-old was big into sports and collecting things like basketball cards. The man in question was, of course, Gary Ryan. The parents seemingly forbade the kid from going to the convention after this, but somehow Gary Ryan managed to meet with him in secret. Later, the boy confessed to his parents that Gary Ryan was leaving New York, but had reportedly left a gift for him at his hotel. The parents were cautious and escorted their son to the hotel, where they found he'd left thousands of dollars worth of sports memorabilia at the front desk for the child. Thus, with all this evidence, they began digging into Ryan's past and found that he was in fact a registered child sex offender in Florida. However, all that happened so far was that Ryan had met the kid once, shaken his hand, and given him a gift. Red flag behavior, sure, but nothing quite incriminating yet. Thus, the parents alerted New York authorities, they alerted the FBI. It turned out all these agencies already had Gary Ryan on their radar, as when the FBI contacted the Sarasota County office about him, they had this to say: let me guess, 13, 14-year-old boy, sports memorabilia, trading online. Indicating that this wasn't his first time going to meet up with a child through sports collecting pages. This was enough to collaborate on a To Catch a Predator style operation where they used the boy's identity to get in contact with Ryan once again. The messages exchanged were not made public, but were apparently incriminating enough to finally arrest Ryan. So there's actually multiple New York sex offenders named Gary Ryan, if you can believe it, so it's hard to find follow-ups to this case that are verifiably the same guy. But it looks as though he's been sentenced to a lengthy stint in prison, making sports conventions just a little bit safer for young men. Matthew Hardy. Matthew Hardy would become known as the UK's worst cyberstalker. That somewhat specific title was earned through years of hard work impersonating classmates, coworkers, and random women online. Matthew Hardy is a bizarre case because it's hard to know what his motivations were. His only known mental illness was being on the autism spectrum, which defendants would claim led to his lack of empathy and would later get a year knocked off of his prison sentence. But it's still definitely not a satisfying explanation. Matthew's neighbors did report that he engaged in bizarre behaviors in the real world too, often yelling at people for no reason and making unnecessary noises in his flat. But people with Asperger's don't do the truly heinous things he did. For you see, starting in 2018, Northridge local Matthew Hardy would take various measures to disguise himself as the women he victimized online. Sometimes he would make a new account under their name on Facebook, sometimes he would just straight up hack into the women's accounts. Keep in mind, these were the days before Zuckerberg was ever on trial for selling data. People were basically putting their entire lives on social media at the time. If you weren't on Facebook, you were a ghost. Once he would log into the account, his usual MO was messaging a friend, coworker, or family member of his impersonating victim and starting with something along the lines of, "Can I tell you a secret?" Then he would tell some egregious lie about the person he was logged in as, or about someone else in their life. For example, he would claim something to the effect of, "I saw your boyfriend cheating on you with a girl at Tesco's." The recipients of the messages would often believe these lies at first, which could shatter them. The lies would often not hold up to scrutiny, but the trust issues still stick around, and he was often impersonating their friends or someone that they had no relation to. The initial victims, most of which were schoolgirls in the same year and the same school, came together to compare these lies and eventually did some detective work and figured out it was likely Matthew Hardy, who was also in their grade. When confronted, Matthew admitted to it with no real explanation, and they thought that was the end of it. Until Matthew continued doing this. He victimized hundreds of people over the course of 10 years. Everyone in Northridge seemed to have a story from Matthew, and the police couldn't or wouldn't interfere, citing a lack of evidence and a lack of laws surrounding cybercrime. Anyone could have been a target of Matthew's bizarre obsession of impersonation. It escalated from petty lies to messages implying he knew where they were at any given moment. The entire town was living in fear of this man until he was finally arrested for cyberstalking in 2022, long after they'd actually established it as a crime. He was sentenced to 9 years initially, but like I said, his Asperger's somehow cut his sentence to 8 years. Congrats to his attorney, I guess? His motivation still remains muddy, again due to the bizarre nature of his crimes. If you would like to explore this case in detail, The Guardian did a podcast documentary series hosted by Surin Kale that was later adapted to a Netflix series, both of which are titled after Matthew's signature opener. Can I tell you a secret? Jerro. Jerro was a Christian youth pastor who once worked for Boy Scouts of America. He was known on TikTok for videos that had a very feminist slant. Obviously, nothing wrong with this, but he reached lol cow status for his very over-the-top skits where he often played the white knight coming to the aid of women. It led a lot of people to accuse him of being disingenuous, even if occasionally he did good things, such as calling out the bullying of an individual with Down syndrome. It's just that it seemed that all he talked about were women's issues, as though he were constantly trying to remind everyone that he was a good person. Still, he had plenty of fans because of his nice guy persona. A persona that would shatter in early 2021 when TikTok user Dilg16 made a now-deleted video that called out Jerro for his grooming behavior. In short, Dilg had become friends with Jerro and would occasionally FaceTime him while he was aged 17. Dilg claimed that Jerro, real name John Bell, asked if he wanted to get an Airbnb with him when he turned 18, also offering him alcohol and only offering to rent one-bedroom apartments. Dilg also accused Jerro of sending a BDSM test to a group of teens as young as 15. Soon enough, dozens of teenage boys and girls came forward with accusations of grooming behavior, including that he'd encouraged young women to start OnlyFans accounts. A lot of the evidence was compiled by a YouTuber named Papa Gut, some being sent straight to him, including illicit photos Jerro had sent to a 14-year-old. A former co-worker of Jerro later revealed that he had left the church he used to work at with her because apparently there were heavy restrictions at this place over how they interacted with the youth. Jerro apparently worked for a different church at the time of the accusations, and lots of people attempted to contact his workplace. Reportedly, the church was denying involvement for a while, but as of now, it seems he's been fired. It doesn't seem like any charges were pressed as no victims went to the police. John Bell's whereabouts are currently unknown, at least to us, and there haven't been many updates. Let's just hope he leaves the kids alone from here on. Daniel Larson. Daniel Larson is another story similar to Chris Chan, a mentally ill artist that was a victim of both abuse and internet trolling, and wound up doing some terrible things himself. You may have seen some of his videos turned into memes. We don't condone spreading memes of mentally disabled people. It's definitely a form of bullying, but this is for reference. Daniel Larson is a self-described singer who's been diagnosed with BPD, ADHD, and autism. His life has been a long series of bouncing from different caretakers and going in and out of homelessness. Daniel began posting to TikTok in 2020, which is where the darkest chapter of his life would begin. He began posting about his songwriting and would often make grand claims of being signed for studio albums or having meetings with record labels. He also had a strange shtick of performing jumping jacks for various celebrities, as well as in honor of George Floyd. All of this made him an easy target for trolling. Some of these trolls went so far as to access personal data of Daniel's. One of them, called Flexburger, who seems to only think about Daniel Larson, most of his posts on social media being about him, leaked a Pinterest account that was tied to Daniel. The account had a folder labeled Girl Crushes, which included images of 16-year-old celebrities, Grace VanderWaal and Darcy Lynn Farmer. Grace VanderWaal is actually a recurring obsession throughout the saga of Daniel. He also made suspicious posts about the age of consent in different states. According to Wikitubia, this led to Daniel taking an extended leave from the internet. When he came back, controversies continued to follow him. He exposed himself on a TikTok live, made some disturbing texts when Flexburger posed as a teenage girl, and is believed to have assaulted his mother, which led to him getting kicked out of his home. He also was believed to have been neglecting his dog named Music, so some of his followers wound up stealing the dog and returning it to the Humane Society. So yes, Daniel Larson is demonstrably not a good person, but it's also worth reiterating that he is also a severely mentally ill man and a victim as much as he is a predator. Which brings us to his trolls like Flexburger. Their behavior is also pretty bad, and they probably don't have the excuse of being mentally disabled. Flexburger has flexed about his brother stealing Daniel's ID card and has basically made it his life's mission to harass the guy. Exposing his predatory behavior is one thing, but it's very clear Flexburger and Daniel's other trolls selected him as an easy target. Just like many of those internet predator hunters, it seems like they're unleashing their sadism on a man that not many people sympathize with. Anyways, Daniel Larson was arrested in 2024 for threatening to blow up the White House. Yeah. A Redditor found a record with the name Daniel Larson in June. It indicates he is currently in federal prison in Springfield, Missouri. So fortunately, it seems he is far away from any children, Grace VanderWaal, the White House, and Flexburger. Bryan Curtis Hill. One of the early examples of cyberstalking, this one was also pretty random, but not in the same way as Matthew Hardy's random victim selection. The victims in this case were just unlucky. In December 2023, the FBI reported the harrowing story. You see, Hill was a victim of a catfishing scheme. For 2 years, he had been sending money to a woman he believed to be his internet girlfriend, but turned out to be a man in South Africa using a random woman's photos. This woman and her boyfriend will remain unnamed, so we will refer to them as John and Jane. When Bryan found out that Jane was not really his girlfriend, for whatever reason, he swore vengeance not just on the catfisher, but on Jane. Jane had no involvement in the catfishing and didn't know her photos were being used in the scheme. It turned out her online photo album was hacked and a lot of personal photos, including nudes, were stolen from Jane. As the press release noted, she was victimized by multiple parties in this story. Given the catfisher was in South Africa, Hill went after Jane first. He managed to track Jane down using the extensive photo library he'd been given. He eventually hacked into her email and was able to find info on her, her boyfriend John, and her family and friends. He figured out she lived in San Diego and took a bus from Michigan to SoCal to track her down. However, Jane and John somehow caught wind that she had been hacked and was being stalked. Her family, suspecting the worst, asked for police protection of Jane. It wasn't made clear exactly how the police or the family knew about Hill's stalking or where he was going to be, but the result was all the same. Hill was arrested about a mile from John and Jane's home. According to the FBI, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison in November of 2013, which would mean he should now be free. Ruby Frank. In March of 2024, security footage of a child asking his neighbor to take him to the police would go viral. In the video, the man helping the boy describes him as emaciated with tape on his legs and wrists. It would turn out that this boy was one of the titular 8 passengers in YouTuber Ruby Frank's parent advice show. On the YouTube channel, which is still available for viewing, Ruby Frank painted the image of an idyllic family showing the various antics she and her kids got up to and how she dealt with the challenges of parenting. She would extensively document basically every aspect of these children's lives, from their hometown in Washington County to their first swim practices to their graduations. Meanwhile, Frank was actually horrifically abusing these children, who she monetized behind the scenes. In February of 2023, she and her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, a fellow YouTuber, were arrested and charged for their crimes. According to the BBC, prosecutors defined the children's living conditions as being a concentration camp-like setting and calling her a significant threat to the community. Most disturbing was that many of the signs of Ruby's abuse were on display in her videos, including several instances where she withheld food from her kids as punishment. You can find compilations of Ruby's worst moments on YouTube made by other people. This wasn't the first time Ruby had faced trouble with the law. An online petition was actually started to report Ruby to Utah's CPS, but nothing ever came of the initial investigation conducted against them. This is while Frank would tell her children that they were evil and tortured them with her business partner Jody. They were both found guilty of the abuse and sentenced to 4 15-year sentences, meaning they will likely die in prison Small justice for their children whose whereabouts are and should stay unknown. Chris Chan. Christine Weston Chandler is of course a huge meme, but is also a long and sad story that is best not to recount in large part. There is, of course, an ongoing comprehensive series about the creator of the Sonichu fan comic and her long history of mental illness, cyberbullying, and bizarre behavior, including being pushed into disturbing acts by trolls. Chris Chan is the victim of doxing and cyberstalking to such an extent that she has been referred to as the most documented person in human existence. Thus, Chris's own abhorrent behavior is also highly publicized, showing that she is just as much of an abuser as she is a victim, which doesn't mean we support any of the harassment, it's just worth noting her behavior. In 2014, Chris was caught vandalizing a Sonic Boom display, which she did because apparently they had redesigned Sonic in a manner Chris didn't approve of. She maced the GameStop employee that accosted her for this. Chris also once infiltrated a forum full of trolls dedicated to bullying her, posing as a fellow troll, and encouraged people to push Chris, herself, to SA her own pastor. I can't imagine what was going through Chris's head at this time, but it's very bizarre behavior. Many women that have interacted with Chris in real life have also reported being groped or Chris attempting to kiss them. Chris's most vile actions were exposed by more of the cyberstalking when calls were leaked, where Chris seemed to brag about having sex with her 79-year-old mother. This led to her arrest for incest and elder abuse on August 1st, 2021. In 2023, all charges were dropped, seemingly due to Chris's autism diagnosis and other mental issues. Chris remains semi-active online, though her comments are limited, and yeah, you shouldn't interact with this individual or cyberstalk them. We all need to know less about each other. Lion Maker. The original Minecraft Predator, and one of the most prolific to this date, was Marcus Wilton, or Lion Maker Studios on YouTube. I like how he added studios, as if he had, like, a production company for recording Minecraft gameplay. He became active on YouTube in 2013 and was an occasional guest star in Stampy's Lovely World. Lion Maker would often host Skype calls with his underage fans, something that would probably never happen nowadays given stories like this keep going around. One of the fans he started talking to was 12-year-old Chantel Wiseman. Chantel would later report to her parents that Marcus had asked her to send nude photos. Later, 16-year-old Stephen Shinks would report that Lion Maker had offered him money in exchange for nudes of himself. Once these went public, Marcus took to Twitter to deny the allegations and claimed that he had been hacked. As an alibi, he claimed he had been arrested and spent a night in jail for unrelated reasons in the night of the supposed hack, which some people believed, at least at first. In December of that year, after accusations of pedophilia proliferated, Marcus had a breakdown on Twitter and confessed to everything, going so far as to tweet photos of his 16-year-old girlfriend, YouTuber Paige the Panda, who he met when she was 14, and call himself a pedo and a pervert. Strange behavior, even for a creep. Perhaps it was because Marcus felt the pressure so heavily that he decided he no longer wanted to defend himself. Putting everything out there probably created some catharsis. After going dark online for a year, he would reemerge and actually attempted a comeback. Though these videos showed his fragile mental state, as he would begin threatening anyone who spoke ill of him with legal action on camera. He would delete these videos in 2017 before a friend of Marcus would take over the Lion Maker Studios channel. It would later be explained that he had actually spent 10 months in jail during the period his channel went dark. The people running the channel still continued to engage with his limited fans, though the channel was deleted before Marcus would ever attempt to mount another comeback. Marcus's crimes, not all of which we even went over here, are a reminder: be wary of anyone interacting with children online. Jeff and Shalea Divine of the Twin Flames Universe cult. Jeff and Shalea Divine began uploading videos to YouTube in 2014 under the banner of Awakened Intimacy. Can't find many videos or information under this channel name, but they would create the website and blog for Twin Flames Universe in 2017, which is what they are known for. They offered an online course which touted a price tag of $4,444 that taught the concept of a twin flame. The concept of a twin flame came from a fantasy novel from 1886 called A Romance of Two Worlds by Marie Corelli. So the whole idea was a work of fiction, but the Divines were charging vulnerable heartthrobs thousands to teach it as a real thing. They assured their students that everyone has one twin flame who they are meant to be in a relationship with long term. This twin flame business was just one of the many ways Jeff and Shalea assumed control of their members. They would at first encourage members to find their twin flames outside of the group, which led to a few of their members being charged with stalking. The members were so certain of Jeff and Shalea's beliefs, as Jeff touted himself as a messenger from God to the vulnerable people they preyed on. Sometimes he'd refer to himself as the hero of the ages, among other royal nicknames. They would soon pivot from targeting outsiders to getting their members to see one another as their twin flame. They were adamant that in each pairing there was a masculine and feminine member, and would sometimes pair people of the same gender together while forcing one of them to transition genders. And all relationships had to be under Jeff and Shalea's command. One former member recorded Jeff chastising him for getting married to his twin flame without first asking to do so. They also had members practice a form of mirror therapy that reminded me of the practices of the infamous Elan School, having people tell their own reflection what they don't like about themselves. All of this was done in mandatory video calls that Jeff and Shalea orchestrated and charged people to attend, filling their pockets while destroying lives. They were apparently planning on spreading their reach to children, going so far as to develop a Minecraft mod called Nightmarecraft that subtly depicted Jeff as the protagonist. YouTuber Farrell McGuire investigated this case, and it's a rabbit hole of its own. It seems that twin flames are going down. As of writing, the Michigan Attorney General are launching an investigation into the cult in the wake of a recent tell-all Netflix documentary. William Glenn Whitaker. In December 2017, a YouTube channel called Piper Rocks would begin uploading bizarre special effects animation videos featuring a girl who is reportedly named Piper Bynes, who the channel dubiously claimed to be the cousin of Amanda Bynes. The description claimed that she was making these videos of herself to show off her passion for special effects. It's still up in the air who exactly this girl is, but one thing is clear. She seems to be a victim of some kind of pedophile ring operating out in the open on the World Wide Web. Though this case mostly escaped mainstream attention and thus a lot of information was not properly archived, there was an investigation conducted by an anonymous group of 4chaners that was documented in a video by Nick Crowley. The full text of the investigation report is preserved on the Internet Archive. The investigation was launched when people began taking notice of the sexual and fetishy nature that a lot of these videos on the Piper Rocks YouTube channel contained. The 4chaners were able to infiltrate the group that was making and sharing these videos through Twitter. It was surprisingly simple, beginning by identifying the Twitter accounts of people that interacted with the Piper Rocks YouTube channel and interacting with their first tweets until they followed their own account. The amateur sleuths continued to interact with the account on Twitter until the account would DM them asking for CP. This is how I understood the report, which, like I said, you can read for yourself in the Internet Archive. Sorry if I made a mistake. It's written in a very corporate language. The report goes on to identify all the accounts aligned with this ring of pedophiles, and the man at the very top, a sex offender named William Glenn Whitaker. Nick Crowley reported that Whitaker was a sex offender that had been previously charged for child pornography production. He had also appeared in the news previously for founding a business called Wizard Productions Modeling Agency that claimed to be looking for young talent. He solicited videos of little girls singing and dancing, all of which he recorded at his own home with the knowledge of the parents, convincing them that the videos would be shipped off to other talent agencies and music industry honchos. He could not be charged for this instance, as the videos he produced weren't explicitly sexual in nature, but the police did shut the operation down. It was clear he had never ended his pedophilic ways and wasn't even all that sly about it. He had a whole ring of pedophiles eagerly consuming his content. The only thing that put a stop to it was Whitaker's death by natural causes not long after the 4chan investigation concluded and the mass scrubbing of all accounts related to him. I almost didn't include this one on the list due to the lack of mainstream coverage and because I don't want to just parrot cases that people like Nick Crowley covered the whole extent of. One question still remains though, one we don't really see getting brought up as much when discussing this case. Who is Piper Bynes? There was clearly a real girl involved in the production of these disturbing videos. She's dancing in front of a green screen for all this uncanny, sexually suggestive material, so who the hell was she to Whitaker? The report indicated that Piper had been active on various online spaces, including Roblox, Newgrounds, and Twitter, and had knowingly sent nudes of herself to older men. Someone needs to find this girl and make sure she's okay, because clearly she's a victim of something awful. Just Gooby. Just Gooby isn't just a guy with a bad haircut. Just Gooby, who I think is really named John, is a Puerto Rican gaming YouTuber, best known for his collaborations with Roblox YouTuber Napkin Nate. Napkin Nate himself is reportedly in prison for Grand Theft Auto as of 2021, though it's not as bad as what his former friend, Just Gooby, is accused of. Gooby was a classic Discord moderator turned predator, using his server, Gooby's Anime Corner, to commit a laundry list of predatory actions. I don't want to keep calling him Gooby, it's too ridiculous for what he is. I'm gonna call him John from here on out. So, John wasn't as popular as his regular collaborator, Napkin Nate, but he did have enough of an audience to have a thriving Discord server. In the public sphere, he has been accused of saying sexual things to minors while on voice chats, using racial slurs, and referencing zoophilia frequently. He had a special obsession with dolphin genitals. These are just the things he did openly, in view of his fanbase and anyone else who may wander into the server. In an anonymous interview series with YouTuber Destructor, victims of John's opened up about how they were groomed by him from ages as young as 12. He reportedly asked them to do sexual voices and encouraged online dating within their voice chats. Additionally, YouTuber Dark Creeper compiled a 113-page document he labeled the Gooby Files, filled with screenshots and testimony against John. In it, John and members of his server are seen distributing CP and sending sexually explicit images to minors, though it is all censored for legal reasons. Thus, officially, these are all just allegations and circumstantial evidence, which is probably why John has not been charged with any crimes. Still, there are a lot of allegations. John denies the allegations, claiming that the people who are attacking him are doing so because they blame him for Napkin Nate's disappearance from YouTube, which doesn't really hold up, because Napkin Nate's disappearance is on account of him being in prison. Zazef. You may have seen the thumbnail for this video reposted in a mocking or memey manner. I got hugged by a girl. This is YouTuber Zazef, a self-described incel. Though physically puberty hit him like a truck and he grew into a more stereotypically handsome man, his incel behavior only seemed to amplify with age. His content evolved from gaming videos to dyspeptic rants and pranks that were often sexual in nature. In between videos like mixing Fruity Pebbles with Lucky Charms, he would make videos harassing strangers, proclaiming his desperation for love, and demanding people admire him. He also dabbled in outright racism. Zazef, real name Alexander Anatolievich Rudenko, does have diagnosed autism, but missing social cues clearly wasn't his issue. He first faced trouble with the law in 2019 when a sting operation saw him arrested for an attempt at soliciting a minor. This landed him on the sex offender registry. His channel went dark the year before being charged, and he hasn't returned to YouTube since. It's unclear when, but at some point, he was apparently released from prison, or perhaps didn't even receive any prison time for his initial crime. But Rudenko would soon appear in the news a second time. Turns out, he was unfortunately charged with assaulting two girls, aged 13 and 17. He had apparently done exactly the same thing that got him arrested the first time, soliciting the minors for meetups online, in Sacramento and Placer County respectively. In an interview with CBS News, not long after Alexander was released from jail on cash bail, his mother would discuss the girls he assaulted. Someone has to be responsible for those girls too. She would claim they should have known better, saying that she isn't sure if the allegations made against her son are true. In the same report, neighbors expressed fear that Alexander was back on the streets so soon. The Omegle Predator. If you were on YouTube in the early 2010s, you may recall when Omegle conversations were all over the site. In these much less antisocial but still just as creepy days of the internet, Omegle was a popular medium for YouTubers to meet fans or to prank people. There was actually a whole trend where people basically doxed other Omegle users in their videos by identifying their home state with their IP addresses. A pretty creepy way to prank someone. It was also a notorious space for perverts to expose themselves to unfortunate randoms. A 2022 experiment conducted by CBC saw a reporter click through the site at random for an hour. She was paired with 11 naked men, 5 of which were doing the thing. One man stuck around for an interview with the reporter, and this is what the interview reported. The man, who was visibly naked but only showing his chest, stomach, and legs, said he was 27. "I come on here to make friends, and it is fun to make friends naked," he told the reporter when asked why he was nude. He told the reporter he is typically naked when online and will sometimes get paired with kids. When asked if he does it in front of them, he replied, "Only if they ask to. If they are comfortable, I am comfortable. It is all about consent." Though Omegle would decline in popularity with time, it didn't fully shutter its operations until November 8, 2023, in the wake of a $22 million civil suit. An anonymous American woman launched the suit in 2021, alleging that when she was 11 in 2014, Omegle paired her with a sexual predator. The predator somehow blackmailed her into sending her photos. His reign of terror over the victim lasted 3 years before he was arrested for CP possession and allowed to keep his anonymity only for the sake of his victims also keeping theirs. Omegle also agreed to close its doors upon losing the suit. CBC conducted another investigation into the fallout of Omegle's closure, where a reporter, quote, observed dark web users express their sadness and depression over losing Omegle, while speculating what website to use next to gain easy access to children. It's clear that though Omegle was a fun idea, its easily accessible nature made it a very dangerous place on the internet. Hassan Bokhari. Hassan Bokhari is the former account director of Twitch.tv. If you recall the rise in sexualized content on the site from the late 2010s to early 2020s, you may have known that Hassan and a few other staff members had a bit of a reputation for defending the female users producing this content and being lax on their enforcement of Twitch's policies. So Hassan had a bit of a reputation as a simp before the allegations would emerge against him. On June 25, 2020, Twitch user VOTCV would take to Twitter to accuse Hassan of inappropriate behavior. The full text has been deleted, but archived on the Wayback Machine. VO claimed she sort of dated Hassan throughout 2015, but she kept it casual and on the down low because she was worried about how it might look dating a Twitch staff member. She first spoke with Hassan on Discord before he invited her to PAX East. While they were involved, Hassan apparently had let Twitch streamer Luminosity off with a warning after discovering for himself that he'd been soliciting young women for nudes online. She then goes on to explain that she had exchanged nudes with Hassan and he had shared the nudes with their mutual friends, announcing that he'd finally seen her breasts. In person, he was constantly manhandling her, getting into her private rooms as much as possible and touching her without consent, before pressuring her into sexual activity. Hassan was quietly dropped from the company and has not appeared online since September 2020. His LinkedIn page notes that he's looking for what's next, and if I may, I'll suggest a prison sentence. That was part of a large wave of Twitch users and staffers being accused of sexual misconduct and poor behavior. Some of these instances were particularly minor compared to Hassan's actions, like having extramarital affairs, but 2020 was a very dark year for Twitch. All the information is out there. Federico Michael Gayton. Federico Michael Gayton went by Fedmaster on Twitch and other socials and is a former member of the variety content group Offline TV, where he got his start as a video editor before transitioning to one of their main personalities. He was best known for his gaming live streams of Fortnite, League of Legends, and other multiplayer games. Federico was an extremely popular and beloved member of the community, which made the allegations against him and his subsequent departure extra heartbreaking. In what was called one of the gaming world's biggest #MeToo moments by CNN, fellow members of Offline TV, Yvonne Ng and Lily Key, would accuse Federico of sexual harassment. Yvonne alleged that Fedmaster was once a close personal friend of hers, and would occasionally fall asleep on her bed while they were watching movies together, something they did quite often. So it wasn't unusual for them to hang out together until one night, a drunken Federico came into her room and crawled into her bed and began to make advances toward her. Federico's a big guy, so I can see why Yvonne was too scared to stop this. A few minutes later, he faked it like he'd been doing this while sleepwalking and pretended to be surprised at him being in her room before leaving. Yvonne would later confront him for these actions, and he claimed he didn't remember anything. That night, he did a similar thing, falling asleep next to her shirtless. Again, he claimed not to remember entering her room. Yvonne kept these allegations between her and her boyfriend at the time for the moment. They at first both tried to give Federico the benefit of the doubt, but when they confronted him, he began guilt-tripping Yvonne into keeping quiet. Yvonne then found out he had been doing things like this to multiple other girls in their friend group, including Lily Key, who went by Lily Pichu on Twitch. It all came out one night while the friends were out having drinks, and the topic of Fed came up. Federico did seem to take accountability and stepped away amicably when removed from the group in June of 2020. Still, being a serial sexual harasser who would push his friends' boundaries is not a good look. He tried to return to streaming on his own in 2021, which didn't really go well. He occasionally pops on social media where some people sympathize with him believing in second chances, and others just drag him for being a sex pest. Otis Bateman and Stephen Cooper. The splatterpunk and extreme horror fiction communities have sort of exploded in popularity in recent years. With books like Dead Inside ending up on Barnes & Noble shelves, it seems that extreme gore in novels have grown in popularity at the same time as extreme gore in cinema has re-emerged. Generally, the online community for these is very tightly knit, given that it is sort of an outsider art. A lot of the authors and readers tend to know each other quite well and are usually completely normal, affable people who just like intense stories. Some authors like Rath James White and Christopher Triana are actually known to be super talented writers who happen to choose a very edgy genre, and there's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong is that some people tend to use the extreme horror medium as an outlet for bad things. Author Matt Shaw, for instance, is controversial for his tendency to put real people, usually women, into his violent horror stories. Two other disgraced figures in the extreme horror community were Otis Bateman and Stephen Cooper. Otis was known for writing novels and short stories such as My Vice Is Your Unfathomable Agony, I Simply Am Not There, and a Two Girls, One Cup remix. Stephen Cooper was known for books like Hack, An Extreme Home Invasion, Not for Children, and Elephant Cock. Otis Bateman had already received flack from sharing real violence clips on his Twitter and referencing real crimes in his writing. The clips he shared online were usually videos of women being beaten or groped. Honestly, I don't know how this didn't get him canceled in the first place. One day, in May 2024, the extent of Otis and Stephen's depravity were revealed. Somehow, a former fan of theirs had gotten messages that Otis exchanged with Stephen Cooper, revealing that he had been sharing illicit messages that Otis had begged female fans into sending. Apparently, he had gotten the pictures by using sob stories about him getting a divorce. Stephen and Otis would share these nudes via Dropbox. In the leaked chats, Otis would brag about feeling like a rock star for getting these images. The whole conversation between them is very sleazy and sexist, even making light of one fan being an SA victim. And when confronted at first, Stephen denied any involvement. Once it was clear that the evidence against them sharing the nudes without consent was too strong, reactions were swift. Otis nuked his social media like a coward, except apparently his Reddit because he seemed to be using it for adult content, according to the blog expert Booksmuggler. Stephen Cooper's reaction was almost worse, for though he did make an apology post, it's probably the most self-serving apology on this list. I'm sorry to the girls whose pictures I saw, he says, as if all he did was happen to glance at some lewds. I'm lonely and struggling with life, and just saw the chance to see those photos as a little win, a treat. I know that sounds horrible and crass, but I'm trying to be honest and open here about something personal. For the rest of the apology, he keeps going on about how insecure and sad he is, as if that might make us sympathize with him. He also acts like a victim too. I offer no defense other than to say the entire planet would be mortified if their private conversations were put up for others to see. People talk differently in private. I was just being supportive to a friend in that way people do in private. As if a sex crime is okay and supportive because it happened in private. I'm not reading all that, but it's one of the most jaw-dropping apologies I've ever seen. He even at one point refers to receiving adult pics as feeling like a bizarre rite of passage into this community. So he felt left out about not getting nudes. How pathetic can you get? The extreme horror community has an issue with defending bad behavior like this, but no one could really support these two. Authors like Judith Sonnet and Erin Beauregard took to social media to condemn their behavior immediately and cut ties. Otis is apparently mounting a return, having just published a short story with a clearly AI-generated cover called Dino Gore. Sam Wall. Brad Burton is a UK motivational speaker, author, and entrepreneur. In 2019, after giving one of his motivational speeches, he took some photos with some fans. One of them was the blonde woman right here, Sam Wall. Wall met Brad for no more than a minute after the speech and took a single photo with him. She would later post a video that endorsed Brad's speech-giving skills. For whatever reason, it wasn't until 2 years later that Sam Wall's obsession with Brad would truly begin. She began a stalking and harassment campaign that would stretch from multiple different social medias, telling egregious lies about Brad to his friends and coworkers, one of which was a LinkedIn post that is now deleted, but reportedly was over 20,000 words. She would make inappropriate comments about him, claiming he had broken into her apartment and killed her cat. Sam would go on to claim that Brad had been the one harassing her and was currently in prison. When Brad posted a photo to verify that he wasn't in prison, she responded that he had a twin impersonating him to keep his reputation going. Burton sent a cease and desist with the threat of a lawsuit, but Wall only responded that she had no money to sue from her. Brad was only Wall's most prominent victim. Her stalking behavior had persisted for more than 10 years, with her victims ranging from former employers to random acquaintances. It's truly bizarre, sick behavior that somehow the police or the website she used wouldn't put a stop to it. One man reported that Wall doxed his place of work and would show up pretending to be his wife to accuse him of domestic violence. Sam Wall is still on social media, and though LinkedIn eventually scrubbed her posts, it's reported no other social media sites did. She has made her pages private, likely in response to the BBC article about her. Burton noted in this article that he forgives Wall's actions and hopes she gets help, but it's insane that nobody seems to be intervening to actually get her this help. Simon Clark. Simon Clark was serving as a teacher in the British town of Ellesmere Port, Cheshire, when he was arrested on June 6, 2025. Clark is also reportedly a father of two, which adds another layer of creepiness to his crimes. His crimes were 29 counts of sexual indecency. The charges were brought up when it was discovered that he had been messaging 26 girls between the ages of 10 and 15 while posing as a 14-year-old boy on Snapchat under the name Jamie Jones 6968. Clark regularly asked for the girls to send illicit photos of themselves. He was found guilty on all counts, but somehow only managed to be sentenced to 8 years in prison. His life is definitely ruined, but when he gets out, what else is he likely gonna do except go back to what he does best? The Boys Town Men. The Tor network is, of course, home to what is known as the Deep Web. For all the mythologizing and jokes around the Deep Web, we may sometimes forget that it is a very real place with very real people, many of which have used the service to commit heinous crimes. Boys Town was a .onion website, and the image that the name paints in your head is probably about as bad as you think. Boys Town was registered in the Republic of Moldova, and since 2019 was one of the largest CP distribution services online. The site featured various chat rooms and categories. They operated like just another website for several years, even though they were committing acts of depravity that most people involved would never really be charged for. The site was shut down when 3 administrators and 1 active user who uploaded 3,500 images to the site were arrested, 3 in Germany and 1 in Paraguay. The names have not been released to the public, likely due to their home country's privacy laws, even though their crimes are likely too numerous to count. The 4 men arrested for involvement in Boys Town were given various sentences that ranged from 7 years to 12.5. Boys Town was shut down, but an independent journalism group from Germany called STRGF, which translates to Control F, managed to uncover terabytes of information from the site still on the dark web, showing that authorities basically did the bare minimum by arresting a few perps but didn't scrub the site properly, nor did they go after enough users. Successors to Boys Town keep being reported and shut down, but no other predators involved in it have been arrested since the initial 4. The users of Boys Town are undoubtedly just continuing to exploit young boys. Jongwoo Sun. On October 16, 2019, a 23-year-old South Korea local was one of hundreds, 336, to be indicted by a federal grand jury in D.C. for involvement in a massive cryptocurrency-funded CP scheme. Reportedly, several abuse victims were also rescued from their captors, meaning it was also a massive sex trafficking operation. Jongwoo Sun was operating the servers for this operation and was arrested by NCA and South Korean police while in possession of nearly 8 terabytes of CP. The website, entitled the unassuming name of Welcome to Video, offered several links to CP purchasable with Bitcoin. Over 250,000 images and videos, 45% of which were believed to be produced specifically for the site. An analysis of the site revealed it had the capacity for 1 million users, based on the Bitcoin addresses it was in possession of. Though it's unclear how many users it reached, it's apparent this operation was massive. There are unconfirmed reports of the site having 1.28 million users, but that doesn't seem to check out against the amount of Bitcoin addresses it had. If that is true, however, what a horrifying world we live in. At the center of it all was an unassuming Korean man in his early 20s. Thus, I am very sorry to recount the following news. As the indictments came from Washington, the arrested individuals were required to be extradited to the U.S. to face charges. In July 2020, South Korea would deny the extradition request since Jung-woo's son had already served his insultingly low prison sentence of 18 months in South Korea. Thus, because of some fucked up international double jeopardy laws, he walked free. His face would be blurred by the media for legal reasons, so he is even allowed to keep some anonymity. The fact that the guy who was running what is believed to be the biggest CP distribution and sex trafficking website in the world is now out and about really should have been a bigger story. Brandon Tyler. In further news on the recent developments of generative AI and deepfake tech, Bryan Tyler from Braintree in Essex was arrested in April 2025 for 18 counts of harassment and 15 counts of sharing an intimate photo or film of a person for sexual gratification. For a whole year, an anonymous internet user had harassed an estimated 173 women and girls by using AI and deepfake tech to edit their photos, making them nude, and performing sexual acts. His anonymous accounts would post pictures with sickening captions, like which one deserves to be essayed by multiple people. The way these images were edited went beyond simply removing their clothes. He added disturbing things to the pictures before they were shared online, traumatizing his victims, some of whom reported losing their relationships. As one victim put it, "I knew they were fake, but all I could think was that everyone else would think it was me. It had an immediate detrimental effect on my physical and mental health. I shut myself away from everyone and everything. I didn't want to go out, and I wasn't sleeping or eating. It was really traumatic at the time and has had a lasting impact." Not much is known about Tyler's personal life, but the BBC reported that he does have a daughter. It is known that he was caught after accidentally leaving his Instagram handle in one of the images he shared anonymously. His defense attorney argued that Tyler was simply a pee addict and is directly quoted claiming he's not an incel. I guess it's true, because he has a daughter, but his posts are definitely built on incel culture and ideology. Tyler was sentenced to 5 years in prison and placed on the sex offender registry for his crimes. Robinho. Robinho was a Brazilian professional Street Fighter player. Street Fighter is a massively popular fighting game series with a large esports scene. One league, known as the Capcom Pro Tour, boasts top prizes of $1 million US. Thus, a lot of the players in the esports scene end up as minor celebrities, especially on their Twitch streams. Robinho was much the same. After years of grinding, he was accepted into the upcoming Capcom Pro Tour in late 2021. In early January 2022, I guess he decided he had it way too good, and decided to brag about committing an evil deed with a smile on his face. In a Twitch livestream clip that was circulated widely and translated to English by ex-user Crusader Online, Robinho tells a vile story of getting his girlfriend at the time hammered one weekend. He then describes taking her to a house and calling up 8 of his male friends to come over. He then says he made a number on her, all while continuing to play his game and thank his Twitch subscribers as if this were a normal, everyday gaming stream. He also keeps laughing all the way through. Some part of Robinho probably needed to get that off his chest. Another part absolutely convinced himself he'd done nothing wrong and that people would respond to this story with high fives and compliments. That was not the case. In the fallout, Robinho was dropped from his esports team and banned from all Capcom events. He would recant the story, calling it a jest, but the internet is forever. It may very well have been a fake story, as people like Brad Williams have been known to make up stories of SA for jokes or to sound cool. That's just something you don't do though. And it's indicative of a predatory mindset if you do, for some reason, think a story like that is interesting or funny. Somehow, Robinho wouldn't even be the only Brazilian gang rapist under that name. In 2024, a Brazilian football star, also named Robinho, was sentenced to 9 years in prison for taking part in a gang rape in Milan in 2013. I would personally recommend the other Twitch streamer named Robinho to change his name, Raul Zito. Another instance of abuse from Brazil that did result in an arrest. Raul Zito was once a Brazilian Fortnite streamer with a large child audience. He would often do videos with young fans and boast about uplifting several child talents. It was this popularity with children that made his arrest extra horrifying. In July of 2021, a young boy's mother would allege that Zito had molested her child so many times that he couldn't put the abuse in chronological order. Raul Zito had contacted his child victims on social media, leveraging his internet popularity and claiming to be working with TV companies, offering them work in the entertainment industry. He had apparently started a whole consultancy board, beckoning parents to bring the kids to his home to record video content. His channel has been removed from YouTube following the charges. However, a snapshot exists on the Wayback Machine, where you can take a gander at his YouTube banner, featuring a drawing of Raul in his signature pink beard, surrounded by young children. I couldn't find details on his sentence, but the fact that he hasn't reappeared means he's likely been imprisoned for his crimes. John David Baker. John David Baker is a former actor and talent scout. A UK citizen who lived and worked in Florida, his main source of income was apparently facilitating auditions and judging shows for child actors in the entertainment industry. Details about his career seem pretty vague. He's touted as an actor in the media, but it seems he wasn't a screen performer because he doesn't seem to have an IMDb. His talent scout career was with a shady-looking company called Celebration Talent, which has some pretty poor review profiles that seem to be unrelated to Baker. Despite all this, the company still seems to be active in Miramar Beach, Florida, hosting dance competitions and the like for rising stars. Usually, these competitions are just ways to make a quick buck off starry-eyed creatives. The whole business of not just acting competitions, but also writing and art challenges as well, is dodgy in the first place. They often just take a bunch of admittance fees and then award a random entrant some meaningless laurels. It also shouldn't come as a surprise that some people may use the space to take advantage of young people. In September 2012, John David Baker was arrested for just that. According to police reports, Baker would reach out to children in his talent competition online, going around the parents. Baker would admit to both sending and soliciting sexually explicit images during these conversations, doing so to around 10 children from 2008 to 2010. He would use his own identity, but would also occasionally pose as a teenage girl to do so. When arrested, he would admit to the crimes and place the blame on his drinking, depression, and struggles with relationships. That kind of excuse doesn't tend to garner sympathy in court. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison for his crimes, as well as a 15-year supervised release following his sentence and a spot on the sex offender registry. Lucas Bowen. Texas Right to Life is an anti-abortion group located in, well, Texas. They produce the Pro-Life podcast and host an annual Life Gala in Houston. They definitely aren't as big as their organizers might want you to think, but they did receive a lot more attention than they would have liked after the arrest of their now ex-political director, Lucas Bowen. Lucas thought he was communicating with a minor over social media, then over text. The 13-year-old girl turned out to be the Houston Metro International Crimes Against Children Task Force. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, the Houston Metro ICAC Task Force is part of a national network of 61 coordinated task forces representing over 4,500 federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies dedicated to investigating, prosecuting, and developing effective responses to internet crimes against children. On August 3, 2022, Bowen was arrested by the task force on charges of online solicitation of a minor, fortunately without putting any real children in danger. The very day of his arrest, Bowen was stripped of his position at Texas Right to Life, according to their director of communications, and now it's just about impossible to find any mentions of him on their website. Whatever your opinions on abortion are, it's clear this guy just wanted more kids in the world for the wrong reason. About 6 months after his arrest in February of 2023, Bowen would be sentenced to 5 years in prison, where fellow criminals may try a late-term abortion on him if they become aware of his crimes. Jeff Dandurand. Jeff Dandurand, who also went by Jeff Duran, is a former child actor turned adult actor turned musician based out of Los Angeles. His acting credits include the movie Solace with Anthony Hopkins, a few episodes of The Wonder Years, and, most notably, Shelley Duvall's episode of The Twilight Zone, where I think he plays the kid in the wheelchair whose mom harasses Shelley, but the character isn't in the credits, so I can't be certain. Most of his acting roles were uncredited fillers. He was more well known as DJ Jeff Duran. His YouTube music channel still has nearly 40,000 subscribers. His website is defunct, and the Wayback Machine snapshot just 404s when you try to access it, so this channel is the best look into the guy's public life we still have. The description reads as follows. Barely recognized as an industry trailblazer, Duran continues to surprise his naysayers with the illustrious number 25 spot on Ranker.com's esteemed list. By age 13, Duran was broadcasting out of his bedroom with what some insiders consider to be the first podcast ever. Duran landed on the radio by age 18 at stations KFI and KLSX 97.1. Radio opened the door for high-profile stand-up comedy gigs, but Duran eventually faded behind the scenes as a trap DJ and mixtape producer. Duran would also go on to create legendary mixtapes for the likes of Playboi Carti, Future, Young Thug, and Offset. DJ Jeff Duran has undoubtedly revolutionized the mixtape scene. His ability to curate unforgettable musical experiences has solidified his status as a true maestro, pushing the boundaries beyond of what a mixtape DJ can and should achieve. His last mixtape would be posted on July 19th, 2024. 2 months later, Jeff would go dark across social media, as on September 17th, he was arrested in Wichita County for online solicitation of a minor. The Wichita police apparently casted a line by joining a public Discord server and posting in the general chat, 14F Texas, any older guys. Jeff would message the account spoofing the girl, "I've never dated younger before, but interested. Am I too old to say that?" And also apparently mentioned his 17-year-old daughter during their conversation. After a subpoena to Discord confirmed the account was owned by Dan Durand, they asked to meet up with him. So he flew from LA to Texas, only to end up behind bars. While the media was definitely exaggerating his fame for easy clicks, it is sort of creepy to see him as a child popping up in several classic shows. To see a young face that would eventually grow up to be perving on girls younger than his own child, and to have him immortalized on the screen and through his apparent collaborations with several named artists paints a sad, scary portrait. What went wrong in Jeff's seemingly fulfilling life? His last post to his Instagram was a video of what I assume is his pet rabbit. Mecha Wreck. Team Fortress 2 is Valve's classic free-to-play FPS game that accidentally created the genre known as hero shooters, when it would be aped by Overwatch and other games of that like. It's a weird case study because, on the surface, it seems rather niche, and it often feels like the game is on life support, with only a few developers working on it at a time, but it still logs around 50,000 players every day. It's got a tight-knit community of players on YouTube as well, whose content ranges from retrospectives to simple gameplay videos. One of those creators was known as Mecha Wreck. As his accuser would note, there isn't much on Mecha Wreck, other than that he was known for playing the engineer character in TF2 and was decently popular as far as old Valve game YouTubers go. On May 14th, 2019, fellow TF2 YouTuber Darty, who used to collaborate with Mecha Wreck, took to YouTube to share screenshots of his Discord activity. Darty's video showed off the stomach-churning conversations that Mecha Wreck had been having with minors. When he asks Discord user Soupy J how old he is, Soupy J says this: "I am a prepubescent lowly boy who moans in a VC." For one thing, this indicates that their voice chat conversations had been sexual in nature. Additionally, this is a horrifying thing for a child to say and is a pretty stark display of what could happen if a kid has too much internet access. A responsible adult would have interfered, but Mecha Wreck would continue to encourage this behavior, basically flirting with this underaged boy in an ironic, memey tone. The messages are just stomach-churning to read. Darty would also post screenshots where Mecha Wreck asks a 15-year-old for illicit photos, calling himself a depraved person looking to relieve himself of an addiction. He also discussed his pleasuring habits with a 16-year-old in his server and tried to push them to do the same. Darty would interview several of Mecha's victims, including Soupy J, who would express regret for interacting with Mecha, but that he didn't realize the weight of Mecha's messages at first, given he's just a child who doesn't seem older than 13. Soupy J was one of the people who helped expose him in the first place, so it's clear he wisened up. Let's just hope Soupy J is doing better and steering clear of internet predators. Other allegations against Mecha include coercing minors to moan while he on VC and constantly discussing his dark side to supposed friends while guilt-tripping them into keeping quiet. It's unclear just how many people he's victimized given his clear modus operandi and a long pattern of deleting Discord messages. It's up to these people if they want to come forward, however, so if they want to let sleeping dogs lie, that's on them. Mecha Wreck's channel and social media have since been nuked after he apologized in private to his victims. He is reportedly banned on Steam and hasn't been seen since. Romeo Lacoste. The description of Romeo Lacoste's YouTube channel tells half the story. I'm a world-famous tattoo artist who has worked on celebrities from Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Kendrick Lamar, Marshmello, to all the YouTube and TikTok stars. I was a contestant on Best Inc. Season 3, which aired worldwide, and have been on the cover of multiple international magazines. Come join my adventure on YouTube. Indeed, Romeo's client list also includes Tyler Blevins, Kendrick Lamar, KSI, the 1975, and a couple of people who belong on this list, like James Charles. Though Lacoste's YouTube channel hasn't been updated in 3 years, he does continue to work as a tattoo artist and post that work on his Instagram. He reportedly continues to tattoo high-profile clients. This is troubling considering what he has been accused of. It began when in 2019, ex-user Yellowchair, a fan of Romeo's, would allege that when she was 15 in 2016, her and a friend had begun talking to Romeo in a group chat. They noticed he had a somewhat flirtatious attitude, so they decided to flirt back to see what he would do. He would then create a group chat with the two girls and send them illicit pictures and videos, knowing they were underaged. He also messaged Yellowchair offering her alcohol. After these allegations, Romeo's ex stated that she started dating him at the age of 14 when he was 19. Romeo would do an interview with Keemstar and claim that he was the one who was taken advantage of, but would admit to doing everything he was accused of, just trying to twist it in his favor, as abusers often do. Though apparently a police report was filed against Romeo, nothing ever came of it except a visit from the cops. He took a brief hiatus from YouTube before returning in late 2019. Then, in February 2020, he was caught once again messaging and hopping on FaceTime with a 15-year-old girl. He learned absolutely nothing from the previous controversy. When Keemstar and other content creators reported on this, Lacoste would send cease and desist letters, and though Keemstar would win in court against Lacoste, in a rare instance where the public was on Keem's side, most sources just folded and removed their articles about him. It was pretty funny, however, that during Keemstar's lawsuit, he demanded and received Romeo's silver play button in the settlement. What a power play. Lacoste continues to operate on Instagram and TikTok to this very day. Feature Man. On August 1st, 2016, a cute little video would go viral titled "Eating a Watermelon with My Clone." It would feature a man cloning himself with a poorly done split comp, feasting on a watermelon in his yard while sharing stories and anecdotes into his microphone. This video was by Tom Willett, aka Feature Man on YouTube, a lifelong entertainer. Though he was a musician for much of his life, he's best known for running a music label called Freeway Records and for his acting. He appeared in 90 episodes of the sitcom Dear John. The whole shtick of his character, also named Tom, was that he sort of just ominously stood around and literally never spoke a single line in the entire series. He also had a thing for being an Abraham Lincoln impersonator, appearing as the former president in Happy Days, Bringing Up Jack, The Drew Carey Show, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He also started his YouTube channel in 2006, where he uploads music, reviews of the pre-made meals he consumes, and Hollywood stories. He became pretty popular, with around 450,000 subscribers at his peak. One of his final acting roles was in the Worthy Kids YouTube animated series Big Top Burger. Not long after this, his disturbing past would come to light. In 1973, before his acting career even really kicked off, Tom was charged with crimes against nature. According to the newspapers of the time, he had been charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old boy on 3 separate occasions. He received a life sentence, but somehow got out on probation. Tom would make a video addressing the article and admitting to the whole affair. The video seemed rather unrepentant, and he talked about his arrest just the same way he talked about all his other Hollywood stories. It seemed he didn't think what he did was a big deal. He would soon delete this video. At first, I hesitated to include this, as it at first seemed that Tom was only a former predator who happens to be on the internet. Though something else came to my attention. On October 8th, 2009, Tom would post a short film he made with a teenaged actor friend of his titled Hollywood Screams. In a Reddit thread posted on April 18, 2023, user Inquisitive Ferret pointed out that Tom had a Flickr account featuring shirtless photos with the actor in the video. Inquisitive Ferret would go on to document several other problematic behaviors of Tom's on YouTube. This included commenting on children's videos. It seems that Tom might not have changed at all, though that isn't for us to say for certain. He does continue to upload food videos, and he's getting up there in years from the looks of things, so we might not have to worry about him for much longer. Rika Nagao. Takamatsu City local Rika Nagao was the single mother of 2 children, one 5 and one 3, herself at the age of just 23 when this story takes place. Nagao was only working part-time when it happened and thus had a lot of time at home on her hands. She would spend some of her free time playing Knives Out, an online video game. This was where she would meet her 12-year-old victim, who will not be named. According to Dire Trip's video on this subject, this was not the first boy she'd interacted with online, but I couldn't find any news articles about her other online activities, likely because of the language barrier, so I'm sticking to what I can confirm. It is known that Nagao had met her 12-year-old victim in person in Fukuoka sometime in 2018. This would be the first of multiple meetings where Nagao would essay the young boy. Nagao would keep in touch and always remind him to keep quiet about what they were doing. In January 2019, police received an anonymous tip about Nagao that led to her arrest. She would confess to production of CP and soliciting a minor for sex, which would wind up carrying a sentence of just 3 years, with a 5-year suspended sentence requiring mandatory counseling. This short sentence may be a reflection on the way people treat predators who happen to be attractive young women. Many men seem to just be jealous of the young boy, as indicated in this forum post about the incident that's filled with people just calling the molestation incident nice. Kyle Massey. Kyle Massey is a former child star, who meme-savvy individuals would probably recognize from his turn in Cory in the House. He was also perhaps best known for his role in another Disney Channel original series, That's So Raven. Since his Disney Channel days ended, he's popped up in a few smaller roles in TV and movies and done some short films. His family-friendly image has come into question, however. A 2021 lawsuit has charged him with immoral communication with a minor. The suit says that the accused had first met the girl in 2009 at Universal Studios and held himself as a father figure to her. The accuser's mother turned in a hard drive that is alleged to contain videos sent by Massey from March 2018 to 2019, containing sexually illicit content sent to the 13-year-old accuser. The suit is apparently still ongoing, so I'll hammer home that these are only allegations as of now. There haven't been any updates to the case since July 13, when Kyle missed a court date and got a warrant for his arrest. He's managed to mostly keep these accusations out of the press and picked up a few acting roles, most recently appearing in Keke Palmer's 2023 featurette Big Boss with Sky Jackson. He also recently got engaged to Hannah Giraldo, a designer who is the daughter of Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo. Hypnotist Sappho. Hypnotist Sappho, later known as Valerie Sappho, is a furry YouTube content creator who began uploading hypnotism-based content filmed in VR chat. If you're not aware of what a furry is, it's basically a person who's really into cartoon animals and will often have an animal avatar called a fursona. It's a very large niche that often has issues with people who find furry fandom to be a fetish and not an aesthetic, and are thus into some pretty messed up things. Sappho's story is one that's been filled with negativity. Valerie herself claims to be a victim of abuse as a child, and for that, I feel terrible for her. But it's not an excuse to promote and encourage the cycle of abuse. Let me explain. Valerie began uploading those aforementioned VR chat videos in June of 2021. The videos were suspect to begin with, many suspecting them to be thinly veiled fetish content. In September of that same year, Sappho would post a video titled Coming Out About Things. In it, she confessed to not being attracted to humans all that much, instead finding animals like German Shepherds to be arousing. Whether it be a genuine confession looking for validation or some kind of bait, the reactions were loud. Valerie would later be accused of dating individuals under the age of 18. Thus, she publicly embraced these allegations, adding the acronym MAP to her Twitter bio. This is the politically correct way to describe a pedophile. The acronym stands for Minor Attracted Person. The term began as a way to describe people who just needed help to deal with their attraction towards minors, to many people trying to peddle it as a valid sexuality. Sappho also reportedly had an 18-plus art account that was banned for featuring very young-looking furry characters in intimate situations. Her Twitters would later be banned in December of that year. In the fallout, Valerie would delete the Hypnotist Sappho channel, but would later return as Valerie Sappho. The hate would proliferate and she would threaten to take her own life at one point, but it was something she didn't follow through on. Valerie seems to be one of those cases where she thrives off the negative attention. She would go on to create a website called Fuck the Feds, which would contain a 168-page guide of how to commit cybercrimes like her pedophilic ones and remain anonymous. The Sappho story continues to get worse with each passing day. She's doxed critics and has been accused of making Discord servers to serve as safe spaces to zoophiles and pedophiles. There's a lot of information out there that can't all be trusted, so this is one you should do your own research about. One thing is clear though, you should stay far away from this individual. Kiro the Wolf and the Zoo Sadists. The furry fandom definitely has a bouncy, lively shell image that can occasionally serve as a cover for much darker things. Another predatory furry went by the name Kiro the Wolf, though his real name is Joshua Hoffman. At his peak, Joshua had over 100,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. If you take a scroll through the channel now, you'll see that it's filled with goofy, cartoony thumbnails that don't even seem to have a sexual slant. Honestly, he just looks like a pretty standard variety content creator who happens to wear a wolf costume. Well, on September 19th, 2018, a Twitter user would leak several videos and screenshots that painted a much darker picture of Joshua and of other smaller members of the furry fandom. The videos and photos contained graphic footage of people abusing dogs. I cannot describe any of them right here. Rest assured, what these people were doing to animals was horrifying. All of these had been shared in a Telegram group chat that Kiro was involved in. Kiro himself admitted to wanting to perform sex acts with roadkill. Kiro would initially deny that he was in the chat and that his account was hacked. There was too much evidence against Kiro, however, especially given that the account shown in the chat logs had posted some of Kiro's YouTube content before it was released to the public. A few of the illicit videos depicting animal abuse were also believed to have been filmed by Kiro, as the dog in the video matched Kiro's dog posted to his social media. In short, Kiro was a monster, and so too were many other people involved in this Telegram using furry fandom as some sort of shield. If you want the story in long form, there is a documentary on the investigation entitled The Furry Detectives: Unmasking a Monster on AMC+. Somehow, Kiro did not face any charges for his involvement in the Zoo Sadist group. Despite how strong the evidence seems, Kiro rebranded his channel and went back to making videos for a while. He has been caught assuming a few other identities over the years as well, and is usually promptly shunned from any spaces he tries to occupy in the furry community. This is to say, obviously, not all furries are zoophiles, but this guy is. Nathan Larson. Hailing from Charlottesville, Virginia, Larson would go to school for accounting and was known as a marijuana reform activist during his college days. He first got into politics in 2008 when he ran for Virginia's 1st congressional district as a third-party candidate, endorsed by the libertarian establishment. He ran on an anarcho-capitalist platform, advocating for the dismantling of government branches, privatization of lawmaking, and even the sale of public roads to private companies. His campaign received little attention and ultimately failed to gain 2% of the vote, losing to Republican Robert J. Whitman. Larson's extreme views would become more public over the years. By 2018, he was advocating for legalizing CP, declaring that women were property, and had uploaded a manifesto calling Adolf Hitler a hero. This got him expelled from his own party. He continued running for Congress as an independent despite openly being a lunatic. To be clear, he'd always felt these things. It's now known that he'd been editing Wikipedia under his own name and spoof accounts to promote CSA since 2005, as well as creating chat rooms for pedophiles. He also threatened to kill President Bush or Obama in 2008 after losing his first election. Wasn't really sure where to slot this in, but yeah, something to note. Not sure if it was Bush or Obama he was threatening because Obama had been elected, but Bush might have still been in office at the time he wrote the mailed threats to Congress. He just threatened the president. Honestly, maybe he wasn't sure who he was threatening either. The law would catch up to Larson again when it was found that he had been using multiple social media accounts to groom a 12-year-old from Fresno. Honestly, shocked he'd do such a thing. He seemed like such a stand-up guy. He solicited images from the girl before eventually flying out to California and kidnapped her from her home at 2 a.m. By the time her parents had noticed she was missing, he was already on a flight to D.C. that had a layover in Denver. The police were tipped off to Larson, however, and they were able to catch him in Denver before he could do any harm to the girl. Larson was brought to jail and would later die there of self-starvation while awaiting trial. Justin Heath Smith. Justin Heath Smith, known professionally as Austin Wolf, was a porn actor and escort active from 2012 to 2024. He worked in New York and won 3 awards for his escort service. Anyways, Justin was signed to the production company Cocky Boys and was considered a pioneer in making OnlyFans an adult-oriented platform during the pandemic. Justin was one of the biggest names in adult content, so the industry was rocked when he was arrested in 2024. As the story goes, he had been exchanging CP with an undercover FBI agent on Telegram from March 24th to the 28th. Justin would be arrested in June after a raid on his New York apartment uncovered an SD card with hundreds of CP videos. During his trial, an investigation of his phone records would also reveal that Justin had been engaging sexually with a minor over either text or social media. He would plead guilty to the charge of enticing a minor for sex and possession distribution of CSAM. The guilty plea carries a minimum of 10 years in prison in New York, though it seems that Justin might still be awaiting sentencing. Louis Daines. Breck Bednar was a 14-year-old who lived in Caterham, a town of about 20,000 people in the south of England. He was an Air Training Corps cadet, described as passionate and warm-hearted with an interest in computers and a bright future ahead of him. Breck Bednar would often play online games with his friends after school. This wouldn't be an issue until at some unknown point in time, he met Louis Daines, a teenage computer engineer who was likely somewhere between 17 and 18 when he met Breck. In 2011, Daines had actually been arrested by Essex police on charges of SA that were apparently dropped for no discernible reason. His interactions with Breck would happen through TeamSpeak while playing various games like Call of Duty. Daines would make grandiose claims to Breck as the grooming of the 14-year-old began, asserting that he worked for the government and could offer him vast amounts of wealth through computing ventures. Breck's parents had raised concerns about Daines' behavior in the months leading up to February 2014. His mother, Lauren Lefebvre, feared he was being groomed by his online friend, reporting that Breck had been refusing to go to church and acting more rebellious, his ideologies completely shifting. Lauren would put parental controls on Breck's computer and report Daines' behavior to the police. Unfortunately, despite Breck's parents doing what they could, he would arrange to meet with Daines over the internet on February 17, 2024. He said goodbye to his mother, leaving under the guise of spending time with friends, then to go to his father's home. Neither of Breck's parents would ever see him alive again. Breck would go to meet Daines at his Essex home, where Daines would stab to death and take photos of his bloodied body. These photos would have a devastating impact on the case. Daines sent the photographs to 2 friends who would continue to pass them along. Breck's parents were busy reporting the child missing when his siblings would receive text messages telling them that images of their brother's mutilated body had been posted to social media. This was how Breck's siblings, and likely his parents, would find out what had happened. Daines soon called 999 to report that he had accidentally killed Breck while trying to stop him from committing suicide. This and the social media posts would lead to the arrest of Daines, but he'd already taken their child from the world for his own sexual pleasure. His trial would reveal that Daines was a lonely individual who felt more at home in online games and was known as a cunning manipulator. He had demonstrably been planning the murder for months, as his online shopping history showed him purchasing duct tape, condoms, and other items used in the attack. He had also given Brock a phone for covert communication, which is how he got around the parental controls and met up with Daines. Louis Daines was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. In the aftermath, Breck's mother would publicly criticize the Surrey police for not doing anything about Daines when she reported his grooming behavior, as well as not recommending her to any organizations that could have assisted, like the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center. She would sue the force in 2016 and settle out of court for an undisclosed sum. Her and the rest of Breck's family would go to establish the Breck Foundation, which helps raise awareness about the responsible ways to use the internet. None of this can bring back Breck, however, who was made to turn against his family and later killed by a manipulative stranger for no other reason than sadism. The sleep fetishists. In November of 2020, YouTuber Nick Crowley made 2 videos exposing multiple channels, 2 of which were called Mr. Sleepy People and Girls. These channels were thinly veiled fetish content of the worst kind, ones that exploited unconsenting women and girls. Mr. Sleepy People would produce and upload videos of passed out women at the creator's home. It is believed that Mr. Sleepy People would get these women drunk before playing with their eyes. Yes, their eyes, While the women, assumed to be friends of the person filming, are completely asleep, he would open their eyelids to touch and lick the girls' eyeballs, who don't wake up because of their deep slumber. The footage is truly horrifying to behold. Sometimes the women are seen with guys who are presumably their partners next to them, also passed out. One of his victims may have been Sleepy's underage sister. The channel titled Girls was different, but for the fetish. It featured content taken from other places, some of which were completely innocuous videos uploaded innocently, some by other people with the same fetish for fondling women's eyeballs while they slept. The channel also featured several videos of clearly underage girls, one of which was an infant. The guy was sexualizing a literal infant. Both channels have been removed from YouTube, but the community, unfortunately, endures. During my research, I found another channel like this, one with close to 600 videos of passed out women. K&K Films Sleepy Girls seems to be trying to make their fetish above board and also not look like a fetish. The description of the channel reads as follows. Defining the term sleeping beauty. This channel is for showing and appreciating how beautiful and adorable sleepy girls can be. Every sleepy moment captured featuring drooling, mouth-open moments, candid sleeping moments, snoring, compilations, and more will be shared on this channel. Content is all from Africa, TikTok, YouTube, Bilibili, and Instagram. Yeah, nice try. We know you're getting off to this. K&K does seem to make videos with paid actors that he uses to advertise his Patreon, where they likely do the whole eye-fondling thing behind a paywall. The key here is that these models consent to being sexualized for this fetish, at least presumably. The ones who don't give consent to K&K are the hundreds of other girls who had innocuous, innocent videos of them sleeping posted on the internet, usually for humor purposes. K&K is uploading these videos as his fetish content, which is exactly what the channel called Girls was doing. While yes, we couldn't find any women who seemed underage, that's still no excuse. K&K Films Sleepy Girls, and likely a slew of other channels, are sexualizing people who did not consent to be sexualized. Imagine finding yourself on this channel, your video racking up thousands of views, most of whom are guys getting off to you without your knowledge. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people like K&K and Mr. Sleepy People on various corners of the net. Dan Silly. Dan Silly is a Los Angeles local who would become known as the Downtown Predator. Dan, in his now banned YouTube channel, would rise to infamy throughout 2015 as he would pursue downtown LA with his camera. He would reportedly target various women, following them around and recording them as he made sexually explicit comments towards them. He would then upload these sick clips to YouTube. The earliest snapshot of his channel on the Wayback Machine shows these harassing videos with titles like I Will Grab Women Soon, which has an absurd runtime of over 3 hours. Several of his videos include MGTOW in the title. MGTOW stands for Men Going Their Own Way and is identified as an anti-feminist, misogynistic movement that's mostly online. Apparently, Dan had made it his life's mission to sexually harass women for the sake of owning the libs. Despite hours upon hours of video evidence being uploaded to Dan's very own channel, it is reported that due to LA's laws around filming and approaching strangers in public, he could not be charged with a crime. Honestly, I feel like there was probably something they could have gotten him on considering the content of his videos. That just seems like more of LAPD being on a perpetual paid vacation. Dan's other videos were podcast-style talks, like Full 3-Hour Seminar, The Truth About How to Be Healthy and Happy. I can't imagine that Dan is either happy or healthy. Dan would slip up in January of 2016, when it would turn out that one of the girls he harassed was just 15. A few months later, Dan would be charged with harassment of a minor, which would land him on the sex offender registry. His prison sentence was apparently not all that long, however, as he would appear in the news again in 2017, this time in NorCal. Apparently, he'd moved to the Sonoma County town of Rohnert Park, and locals were outraged. Local police began posting flyers of Dan around town and near his apartment complex, prompting citizens to pressure Dan to leave the town. Just days after his move to his Rohnert Park in August of 2017, he announced he'd be returning to LA. Dan has managed to stay out of the news since the Rohnert Park episode, but I found he has since restarted his YouTube career on a new channel as his other one was banned at some point. His last upload was on June 21st of this year, complaining about his rheumatoid arthritis. His description shows he hasn't changed at all. Banned from YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Twitch, Rumble, BitChute, Gab, Kick, PayPal, and content has been removed from even Odyssey. I have striven to tell the truth and inspire people to live the best life possible. LTBLP. Most people seem to not live based on scientific fact and their own reason, but follow what other people and organizations suggest and destroy themselves and society through the use of illegal drugs, marijuana, tobacco, nicotine, alcohol, caffeine, junk food, pornography, crime, etc. It's incredible. The fat people, degeneracy, ignorance, the irrational hatred of Donald Trump, etc. Unfortunately, what has held me back is health problems, but my goal is to prove that any man can start from nothing in an evil ghetto and work his way out and arrange around him a health-promoting environment to where he can attract a lawful, pure, virgin wife and desired concubines and make progress as rapidly as possible toward maximizing his reproductive potential. Hiroshi Maue. Hiroshi Maue was once a Kanazawa student who suffered from a bizarre psychosexual disorder. Somehow, his wires had been crossed so that he could only achieve pleasure while strangling people. In 1988, he strangled a male friend, which resulted in him being expelled from college. He would attempt to strangle 4 more people through the years, leading him to serving 1 year in prison in 2001, then 22 months in 2002. You'd think after strangulation attempt 5, they'd realize this guy needed a bit more than a brief vacation in jail. In February of 2005, Hiroshi would commit his first murder, that of a 14-year-old boy who would not be named by the press. He had met his victim on a forum. Hiroshi would meet up with the boy and kill him once he got him alone. In some places, it was reported he also defiled the body, but I couldn't find confirmation of this. He would do this to 2 more suicidal people, a 25-year-old woman and a 21-year-old man. He would then be arrested in June of that year. His trial was not very public, but relatively speedy, and he was soon handed the death penalty. His lawyers would at first make an appeal against the death sentence, but he retracted the appeal in July, saying, quite simply, "I have worries." He died on death row on July 28, 2009. Hiroshi caused quite a stir in the media, as he was one of the first known serial killers who lured his victims off the internet. He did seem to feel guilt, given he chose to go to death row willingly after all. How he only seemed to get off on strangulation, we may never know. Kane Fairbank. In May 2022, 18-year-old Kane Fairbank would lure Haiti Monroe off of Tinder and into his car. It was here he would begin stabbing her. Haiti bolted from the vehicle, but Fairbank caught up and stabbed her again. A large group of witnesses approached and fortunately made a barrier between Fairbank and his victim. Also fortunate was that some of the witnesses were EMTs and nurses, and Haiti's life was saved. The afternoon of bloodshed would continue when Kane fled the scene and ran to a random neighborhood in their town of Bountiful, Utah. It was there he would stab a random 64-year-old woman who had just been out for a walk. Once again, witnesses intervened and the woman survived, albeit with serious injuries. After Kane was detained by a citizen, he would be arrested and speak to the detectives real nonchalant about the pain he'd caused. He said that he had been planning to murder Haiti ever since he met her on Tinder, noting that it was a sexual thing, before apparently laughing. It was his deepest, darkest fantasy to kill a romantic partner. His next victim was selected because she was elderly and vulnerable. In an interview with KSL-TV, Haiti said that she felt they had a real connection. They'd been speaking online for months, sometimes until 1 in the morning. It was all a part of Fairbank's psychosexual plan, however. Haiti seemed proud of surviving her attack, showing off a tattoo she'd gotten of her hand grabbing a blade. Fairbank also seemed to have some pride, however. When he was asked if he'd have done anything differently, he showed no remorse, noting that he'd get a sharper knife. Kane Fairbank was sentenced to 18 years to life in prison for 2 counts of attempted murder. Marcel Hess. In 2017, here in Germany, local Marcel Hess would lure his 9-year-old neighbor into his basement. Marcel was 19 at the time, and the withdrawn teenager may not have been seen as much of a threat, so the young child innocently assumed Marcel was telling the truth when he said he needed some help with a ladder. Marcel would brutally murder the 9-year-old neighbor before photographing the body. He would share the images of his crime through WhatsApp before plastering them across the deep web. The people he shared the brutal photos with immediately reported him, and Marcel fled his home to hide out with a school friend who didn't know of the murders. Reportedly, when this friend caught wind of the national manhunt underway for Marcel, he was stabbed 68 times by the killer, about 14 hours after the murder of the child. Seems his friend was both killed out of convenience and as a victim of opportunity. He remained inside this friend's home for another 2 days before burning it to the ground and walking into a nearby restaurant. I can only imagine the terror of the diners when they realized who Marcel was and he asked for them to phone the police. Hess remained cold and emotionless as he was arrested without resisting and placed on trial. The whole time, he never admitted to guilt, even when looking the child victim's mother in the eye. Though it was initially reported he would do time in a psych ward, it seems that Hess was sentenced to life in prison. It is now believed that Hess may have been the suspect in the murder of an unknown woman. His internet history was examined, and it was observed that he had bragged about murdering a woman in an online chat room. He claimed that the woman had put up more of a fight than the child. I cannot find any updates as to whether he actually was sentenced on account of any women's death, likely because his initial crimes already landed him behind bars for life. Smart Schoolboy 9. Once again, you probably watched the Nick Crowley video on this topic, though it's important to clear the air on a few fronts and try to only be objective on this situation. This is because Nick Crowley's video reportedly made a few mistakes about the facts. According to a report by the Byline Times, David, Smart Schoolboy 9, is not named Alter and does not live in London right now, as was initially reported. What is a fact is that David has made a long series of Instagram accounts where at first he would boast a strange obsession with protecting children from pedophiles before posting a series of pedophilic images he created. These images feature himself dressed in a tight school uniform with a creepy, distended mask making strange noises, bizarre edits of children made to look like his malformed mask face, and some videos of neighboring children. That earlier mentioned report by the Byline Times states that there's no evidence David has been convicted of any crime. This may be true, but the Byline Times report kind of frames it in a weird way, as though we shouldn't be paying attention to David at all because of this. This report was made to criticize the rise in internet vigilantism, which is fair. A brick was thrown through the window of what may or may not have been David's house because of Nick's far-reaching video. However, David has been reported for stalking children, and his content indicates the guy needs genuine mental counseling. And Nick isn't wrong for pointing these things out. That being said, the resulting witch hunt, as the Byline called it, did result in doxing of people who had nothing to do with David. This is why the situation is so frustrating. David appears genuinely predatory, and when the police don't step in to interfere in ways that the public deems adequate, the public forms a mob. This mob justice can have devastating consequences, however. It seems Smart Schoolboy 9 has scaled back his presence, but it's hard to tell in the wake of the imitators that have cropped up to grift off the attention the case received. Thus, we can't conclusively say if David is getting help or if he's still posting the eerie content and stalking underage children. David Leslie Fuller. Catfishing is a phenomenon named after the documentary movie of the same name. While its connotation has become someone using another person's photograph in order to appear more attractive on dating profiles, many catfishers have more sinister motives. Case in point, in the summer of 2002, 13-year-old Casey Woody thought she was in contact with a teenage boy named Dave Fagan, whom she had met in a Christian group chat online. Casey was a middle schooler from the town of Conway, Arkansas. She was known to be a bright student enrolled in several gifted learning programs. Her Yahoo username that Dave found her through was reportedly Model Behavior 63. Casey had a hard childhood, losing her mother at a young age and moving away from home. So her father saw it suitable to allow her to use Yahoo Messages to keep in touch with friends. Unfortunately, it was in one of the public Yahoo chats that Casey's grooming would begin. Dave Fagan was actually a grown man named David Leslie Fuller. While he told Casey the truth that he was from San Diego, he was actually 47 years old. They had begun bonding over what Casey must have thought were things they genuinely had in common, like losing loved ones. When Casey told David she had lost her mother, David informed her his aunt, who happened to live near Casey, had fallen into a coma from an accident and wasn't expected to survive. Casey informed her father about the boy she was talking to and told him he was turning 18. Her father would demand Casey stop talking to him, as an 18-year-old was far too old to be conversing with a 13-year-old. Casey would begin talking to who she thought was her internet boyfriend over the phone. Casey would then soon become infatuated with another internet user named David, who claimed to be 14. During this time, she scaled back communication with Dave and declared to her friends that she was dating Scott. Casey's friends became alarmed when Scott sent a photo of himself to Casey's address, and they warned her of the dangers of giving away her address to people on the internet. Scott would later turn out to be a real teenager, but the point still stands. Casey's friend Sam even wound up reporting Casey's internet use to the school counselor, fearing for her safety. It was on the day that Casey would see the counselor that she would then go and patch things up with Sam, then ask her to stay the night. In fact, she asked several friends to stay the night, but they all declined on account of it being a school night. This was on December 3rd, 2002. Casey disappeared while staying home alone that evening. A full-scale investigation was launched where detectives learned from Casey's friends that her internet friend Dave that she'd been on and off with was coming to Arkansas to visit his aunt. Knowing that Dave apparently hailed from California, they searched the town for California license plates and found David Fuller's car at a motel. They had the man's name, his laptop, and loads of incriminating evidence. They just didn't have the man, and more importantly, Casey. They managed to track Fuller's location to a storage unit while a van parked inside. When FBI and police tried to enter, a single gunshot rang out. Fuller had taken his own life inside the van. Unfortunately, Casey was found next to him. She had been molested and shot in the head. It was found that the suspect, David Fuller, had 2 children and had previously been accused of showering with his daughter, assaulting his wife, and exposing himself to other children. The FBI searched his apartment and found framed photos of Casey, as well as the names and addresses of several of her friends. Police also found evidence he'd visited Arkansas before, recalling an incident where an unidentified intruder had broken into Casey's friend's house while they were having a sleepover before fleeing. It's likely that this was David. Casey's legacy is survived by the Casey Woody Foundation, which promotes internet safety. Gary Francis Newman. Carly Ryan was a local of Stirling, Australia. Her killer, Gary Francis Newman, lived in Melbourne in 2006 when he began grooming her online. Similarly to Carly, Gary claimed to be an 18-year-old, while Ryan was 15. He claimed to be named Brandon Kane. Another familiar pattern with this incident was Brandon Kane imitating Carly Ryan's interests and claiming they had a lot in common, like their taste in music. In January 2007, Gary traveled to Stirling, assuming the name Shane, Brandon's father. Even though his name was Shane Kane, Ryan's mother allowed the man into their house to give Carly presents from the fictional Brandon, then let her attend her 15th birthday party. His red flags became red banners at the party when he made inappropriate contact with Carly, including trying to sleep on the bed. But still, Sonia didn't tell him to leave until the next day. Unfortunately, Gary would stay in town to stalk Carly and kidnap her on February 19th. Carly's body would be found floating in a river the next day, dead of blunt force trauma. It would later be found that Newman had conspired to kidnap Carly with his young son, who likely played the role of Brandon Kane. The son was a minor and would be cleared of involvement. Gary was handed a life sentence, which he is currently serving. None of this would bring back Carly Ryan, however. Another young woman killed by the preventable phenomena of internet predation and catfishing. Richard Samuel McCroskey III. McCroskey went by the name Psycho Sam and was a member of the rap movement known as horrorcore. Horrorcore rap is a movement that was popularized by a group called the Ghetto Boys. It focused on creating psychologically unsettling sounds and lyrics, often singing about gruesome violence inspired by splatter movies. It's a far cry from the gangster rap that inspired it. At the end of the day, it's just more transgressive art, and there's nothing wrong with singing about killing people, though some horror rappers do seem to rely heavily on shock value, something that's not uncommon in horror spaces. Thus, there was a minor storm in the media when McCroskey was arrested, with some pinning the blame for his crimes on violent rap lyrics. 18-year-old Emma Niederbrock had met McCroskey online in a space for horrorcore rap. Emma was a fan of the genre and struck up a friendship with McCroskey over the course of about a year. Though McCroskey was described as a mild-mannered man, his lyrics in some of his songs were striking. They included things like, "Last night I was the murderous rage. Now I gotta get rid of the bodies before the corpses start to get to rotten." It was generally understood that Psycho Sam was a character that McCroskey was playing, however, which is why Emma and her family, Reverend Mark Allen Niederbrock and Dr. Deborah Sue Kelly, had no problem with inviting McCroskey to stay with them at their home in Farmville, Virginia, to attend a horrorcore festival nearby. Everything went fine until the days after the festival. On September 17, 2009, McCroskey became enraged with Emma as she had made it clear that she didn't want to be exclusively in a relationship with him. In the early hours of the next morning, McCroskey would take his revenge. McCroskey would first kill Melanie Wells, Emma's friend who had attended the concert with them and was sleeping on the couch in their Farmville home. He snuck downstairs with a hammer and mauled and bludgeoned her to death, with her never waking up to defend herself. He repeated this method with each of the other family members in the house, with Emma as his last victim. Afterwards, he recorded a video confession of the crimes. Police arrived after Melanie Wells' mother reported making several calls to the house, each time speaking with McCroskey, who gave a different excuse for why no one else would come to the phone. Initially, he managed to turn them away, but they soon returned and discovered the victims' bodies. By then, McCroskey had fled the scene, but was later apprehended at an airport. McCroskey would be investigated by a cult examiner due to his occult ties. He would plead guilty on September 10, 2010, narrowly avoiding the death penalty and receiving a life sentence. Adam Isaac. Not to be confused with the folk singer of the same name, Adam Isaac was a local of Merthyr Tydfil, South Wales. Aside from being the most busted 23-year-old I've ever seen, Isaac had admitted to 8 sexual offenses previously before his arrest for online grooming. Isaac had used Minecraft, the best-selling online game in the world, to meet 2 nearby children. He would then create a Minecraft world to lure them into more private conversations. It was here he would goad them into sending illicit images of themselves. As one of the victim's parents noted, her child had been briefed on online safety. At age 12, she expected he'd be able to handle himself online. It just goes to show how trusting children can be and how easy it is to make them drop their guard. The mother indicated her son is traumatized by the event and has matured fast, but she wants him to be able to just be a child once again. According to BBC, Isaac confessed to causing or inciting child prostitution or pornography, performing sexual acts in the presence of a child, encouraging a child to engage in sexual activity, and possession of indecent photos of a child. He was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in prison for his behavior. It's incidents like these that make Microsoft's strict new guidelines around Minecraft's online interactions somewhat understandable. They're definitely not tackling it in the right way, however, because stories like these keep proliferating in the online gaming world. There's just not many games that are entirely safe for children anymore. Christopher Collins. Nottinghamshire police reported in May of 2025 that they had arrested 33-year-old PlayStation gamer Christopher Collins for victimizing an 11-year-old boy. The anonymous victim's father became alerted when he noticed that his son had been making purchases online that he shouldn't have been able to afford, given he had no allowance of his own. The father began combing through his son's activity on his PlayStation 5 when he opened the Discord app. It was here he discovered the explicit images his son had been sending to Christopher. The man's heart dropped as he saw Chris offering his son PlayStation credits to purchase games in exchange for illicit images. Collins positioned the sending of these images as dares in order to make the child who couldn't fathom what he was doing sound cool. The dares reportedly grew more and more serious over the multiple weeks he was communicating with the boy online. Collins was arrested at his home in Nottinghamshire in May, where police searched his phone and hard drive and found hundreds of images of CP, many of which were considered Category A. Collins was brought up on several counts but received just 4 years in prison. He will also register as a sex offender and have his online activity restricted. Ellis Dismore. Ellis Dismore was just 24 when he was arrested for his violent actions towards teenage girls. Ellis's unnamed victim was reportedly just 15 when he began grooming her online. He reportedly hounded her for many months before tracking her to her school. The hounding included blackmailing her into sending illicit pictures and making violent threats that he would eventually act on. Tracking the girl to her school in her town of Middlesbrough, he would brutalize her with a knife on her way home. He stabbed her 5 times during the attack before a passerby intervened and saved the teenager's life. After his arrest for the crimes, police did some digging and found that this wasn't the only young girl that Dismore had victimized. They found on his online accounts that he'd been exchanging and soliciting pictures from multiple young girls, who he would blackmail with these images, demanding sexual favors and threatening to essay the girls and expose these photos if they didn't comply with his demands. Several of these victims would be contacted and made to anonymously testify against Dismore. This would result in him receiving a laundry list of sentences, including attempted murder, having a bladed article, 7 charges of inciting a child into sexual activity, 5 charges of distributing an indecent photograph of a child, 2 charges of stalking, causing fear of violence or serious harm, distress, 4 charges of making indecent photographs of a child, 4 charges of arranging, facilitating the commission of a child's sexual offense, sending an indecent electronic communication with intent to cause stress anxiety, causing a child to watch an adult act. Dismore was sentenced to 43 years in prison for his crimes. Mohammed Zain ul Abidin Rashid. Rashid was a resident of Perth, Australia, and is another one of the most prolific predators on this entire list. Australian authorities said that this case was one of the worst sextortion cases in history. Rashid had victims in his home country of Australia, as well as Japan, France, the UK, the US, and at least 15 more countries. Over 2/3 of his hundreds of victims that were testified were under the age of 16. He would pose as a 15-year-old YouTube star influencer, making grandiose claims before goading the underage victims to undress on a live stream or a video call. Sometimes he would invite his fans and friends to watch the live streams where he made the girls perform disturbing acts. It is reported that one of these streams with an underage girl reached up to 98 viewers. He reportedly collaborated with other predators through these live streams, giving information on children he believed would be susceptible to their manipulation. He would save images from these streams and use them to blackmail his victims into performing more acts on camera. He would be arrested for his crimes in 2020 after Interpol tipped off Australian authorities. He would not be sentenced until August of 2024, however, perhaps due to the hundreds of victims he racked up over the years. It was also found that he had physically abused a 14-year-old in his car when she came forward with allegations against him. For that, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, followed by a 17-year sentence for his internet predation. He will be allowed to apply for parole in 2033. Creeps McPasta. Creepypasta is a play on the word copypasta and is a style of horror short story that is spread throughout the internet. Prominent examples include Slender Man and Jeff the Killer, or more recent examples like The Backrooms. The fact that many people prefer to listen rather than read to these scary stories has led to a thriving community of creepypasta narrators on YouTube. Though the style is far from its peak popularity, you can still find plenty of deep voice narrators doing audiobook-style readings of internet scary stories. One of those narrators is Creeps McPasta. The Creeps McPasta YouTube channel currently sits at around 2 million subscribers and continues to upload videos with a live stream of older content playing on a loop at all times. He's also been accused of grooming by a voice actor who he used to work with when she was 12, called Komori. Komori would appear in Creeps McPasta's videos as a child actor for some of the stories. In 2020, Komori would go public with allegations against Creeps that he had solicited illicit pictures of her and gotten into an online relationship with her when he was 21, 9 years older than her. Creeps would release a 40-minute response video. In short, he claimed that the grooming had happened, but it wasn't him, that the accounts that had participated in the grooming against Komori were someone impersonating him in order to prey on his fans. This was quickly debunked, however, as his email address would be tied to a PayPal account that had sent Komori money for gifts. Creeps would also be called out for removing credits for Komori's acting in his videos. She also had messages from Creeps' official Facebook, proving beyond a doubt that the two had interacted. A deep dive into the social media account of Creeps McPasta by YouTuber Matanui would also reveal a pattern of pedophilic behaviors, including publishing a sexual story with a 14-year-old protagonist. Fellow horror YouTuber That Creepy Reading, who used to work with Creeps McPasta, would make another video in November 2021 that compiles a lot of the evidence against Creeps in a roundabout way that would cause a lot of Creeps' former supporters to turn against him. Still though, since no charges were formally brought against Creeps, he remains on YouTube to this day, though it seems he hasn't made any convention appearances like he used to, and his viewer counts have dwindled severely. Marcus Dibble. Marcus Dibble is a former Melbourne-based comedy YouTuber who was active on multiple channels from May 2011 until July of 2021, when his channels were all banned in the wake of his downfall. An archived channel with some of his videos is out there if you are curious. Marcus was best known for his comedy videos, including rant content and callouts of other YouTubers. He seemed to thrive off stoking minor controversies and getting attention from the larger YouTubers he would criticize. He also ran a photography business that specialized in illicit modeling shoots. He had around 800,000 subscribers on his main channel at his peak and claimed to be vocally anti-pedophilia, being quoted as saying, "Age is just a number and jail is just a place." So it is ironic that in July of 2021, he was arrested for the grooming of an underage girl. Marcus had been in communication for 2 years with a young girl that he had met when she was 13 and he was 24 or 25. The girl had apparently applied to be a model with his photography business online, which again did a lot of racy and explicit photo shoots, and Marcus apparently told her that her age was fine. He began soliciting explicit photos from the girl by sending her photos of suggestive poses from his other shoots that he wanted her to try. They were apparently Snapchatting and talking on the phone on the regular throughout 2019. ABC reports that the messages went from romantic to sexually explicit within the 2-year span of grooming, with Marcus writing disturbing things to the underage child. In May of 2020, Marcus invited the girl to come stay with him at an Airbnb, which her mother caught wind of and reported Marcus to the police for. His home was raided, and he was caught in possession of CP. After a lengthy trial, Marcus managed to avoid prison time in the end, but was registered as a sex offender. Apparently, the presiding magistrate felt some sympathy for Dibble, who said he was unlikely to reoffend and had been punished enough by losing his YouTube channel and the harassment he received in the wake of his crimes. Marcus reportedly moved to Queensland and hasn't been heard from since. Matthew Falder. Matthew Falder was once described as an excellent student and a brilliant academic. In 2017, he worked as a postdoctoral researcher and a geophysics lecturer at the University of Birmingham. The fact that he was such an intelligent mind made the depths of his web crimes a lot more disturbing due to the cunning nature he enacted them with. As far back as 2009, Matthew would use the internet, often posing as a young lady to manipulate underage victims into posting illicit photos of themselves online. He would save these images and use them as blackmail to get his young victims to do the unthinkable. As one investigator noted, in more than 30 years of law enforcement, I've never come across an offender whose sole motivation was to inflict such profound anguish and pain. Matthew's sadism saw him threaten his young victims to not only send more incriminating photos, but to hurt themselves and others. What he asked them to do is so disturbing, I can't even talk about it here. Although his online activities were known to law enforcement, as he would post his content to deep web hardcore sites under the username 666devil, among other 70 other accounts. Still, it would take 6 years until he was actually arrested in 2018 for his rap sheet from hell, as he called it. He was very much proud of his actions. It took over half an hour to read the 137 charges in Birmingham court. Falder pleaded guilty on all counts and was sentenced to 32 years in prison. Abdul Elahi and Anthony Burns, the Sugar Daddies. Not just one of, but probably the most prolific predator on this list. Birmingham local Abdul Elahi was similar to Matthew Falder. He would use sugar daddy websites where he would pose as a wealthy stockbroker and seek out people who were willing to give inappropriate favors in the form of videos or photos, often specifically looking for underage victims who should not have been on these sites in the first place. He would promise thousands of pounds worth of payments once he received the footage from the desperate individuals. Abdul would resell the pictures he acquired in what he called box sets to fellow pedophiles and creeps, which reportedly made him up to 25,000 GBP. He would stalk the young victims, identifying their family through various means like demanding photos of ID cards, then threatening to mail the illicit photos to their families in exchange for more images. It is estimated that he circulated over 100,000 images and victimized over 2,000 people this way. The sale of these images wasn't his only source of revenue. When in custody, he admitted that he would offer mentorships to fellow predators. Elahi was educating other people in how to inflict the same torture he inflicted on his own child victims. One of those pupils was Suffolk local Anthony Burns, who is himself believed to have victimized over 600 people in much the same as Elahi did. Sugar daddy sites and social media were his stomping ground. Abdul Elahi was sentenced to 32 years in prison, with an accomplice who helped him produce videos being sentenced to 6 years, 9 months. Anthony Burns was jailed for 24 years. Mando Pony. Daniel Andrew Stein II, more commonly known by his online persona Mando Pony, was a musician and YouTuber primarily known for his parody songs based on the Five Nights at Freddy's games. Given that he was involved with a horror game that's weirdly popular with children, his past is very troubling. Going back as early as 2015, Daniel was creeping around on websites like Discord, grooming underage fans with the full knowledge that they were children at the time. In July 2020, an account created on X titled Andy Exposing would shake Daniel's life and career as we know it. Multitudes upon multitudes of screenshots, videos, and testimonials began to surface, blatantly exposing Daniel's behavior, which ranged from minorly problematic to outwardly pedophilic. One of his victims, only known as K to the public, sadly fell victim to gaslighting and severe mental abuse in addition to the grooming. In 2020, Daniel personally doxed another of his victims via Discord, publicly admitting to obtaining their home address under false pretenses by pretending to want to send them a gift. Daniel was also caught having collided with another car while on his way to buy illicit drugs and proceeded to flee the scene without exchanging contact information with the other driver, as well as being accused of screaming in his wife's face so viciously that she had to abandon a gathering with her friends to calm him down. As of 2025, to nobody's surprise, Daniel's career has degraded massively, and his work is fading slowly into obscurity. Boy in a Band. One of the most popular comedy music-based creators in the early to mid-2010s, David Brown, also known as Boy in a Band, was expected to be one of the most popular creators on YouTube. David grew to nearly 3 million subscribers at his peak, while collaborating with YouTubers like PewDiePie, Jaden Animations, The Odd Ones Out, and more. David was known for edgy, controversial content, the most popular of his songs being titled Don't Stay in School, which itself stirred outrage all of its own among parents, who believed it contributed to their children lashing out and refusing to go to school. To the internet's surprise, David all but disappeared from the internet in late 2019, not posting anything new on any of his social media accounts. The reason for this was theorized to have been because a collection of testimonies, recordings, and screenshots were released by several of his ex-girlfriends roughly a month prior, clearly displaying mentally, physically, and sexually abusive behavior from David towards upwards of half a dozen young women. One of the most widespread instances of David emotionally manipulating his audience was a poll that he posted on his YouTube channel. In this poll, David goes to lengths to describe how he has been so depressed that his emotions and sleep pattern were all over the place, and he ends the poll by asking if he should take all of them at once to speed up the effects, clearly worded to make his fans think he wanted to end it. He eventually decided against it, but only after he garnered considerable support from the people that watched his videos, a large number of whom were teenagers. David was also accused of hebephilia, which is classified as sexual attraction to children in the early stages of adolescence. Reddit user Aztecas released a statement that went into detail about David's emotional, physical, and sexual abuse towards girls as young as 15, stating, "Many years of empowering his oppressive way of behaving had prompted numerous awful and risky circumstances that included long stretches of untruths, controls, and profound monetary, physical, and even maltreatment of numerous little kids. He additionally has a provable pornos compulsion that incorporates him being drawn to young ladies, ladies who dress to seem to be kids, harmful pornos, and attacks. He's a hebephile." At the time of writing, David has still not spoken out about the allegations, has not posted to YouTube or Instagram, and to the public's knowledge, no official charges have been leveled. Dr. Disrespect. Once one of the biggest streamers on Twitch, Dr. Disrespect, real name Herschel Beam, faced massive controversy and a sudden channel ban back in 2020, while only halfway through an exclusivity deal with the platform. Over a year after the ban took place, it was revealed that Herschel had been inappropriately messaging a minor, despite having a wife and kids. A former Twitch employee went on record on X, revealing that Herschel was using Twitch whispers to sext a minor, intending to meet up with her at TwitchCon. After the news of his ban and the revelation of his actions went viral online, Herschel wrote a lengthy letter in an attempt to explain himself and his actions. Instead of taking full responsibility and accountability for his actions, Herschel lashed out at those who were calling his actions predatory, saying, These were casual, mutual conversations that sometimes leaned too much in the direction of being inappropriate, but nothing more. And later on, I'm no fucking predator or pedophile. Are you kidding me? Anyone that truly knows me fucking knows where I stand on those things with those types of people. 4 years after Herschel was booted from Twitch and demonetized on YouTube, gaming company Midnight Society dropped Herschel from a project they were collaborating on. One of the studio's co-founders, Robert Bowling, went on record to say that he would never work with anyone who had been known to act inappropriately towards minors, and that he would only work based on facts. As of early 2025, Herschel is still banned from Twitch, but his YouTube channel is monetized again, and he is still very popular on the platform. EDP445. Bryant Moreland, age 30, known online as EDP445, originally had 2 million subscribers, but he was lured out and exposed as a predator by a vigilante sting operation group called Predator Poachers. In 2021, Predator Poachers posed as a 13-year-old girl online, eventually resulting in their decoy coming into contact with Bryant, who proceeded to message super inappropriate things to someone he believed to be a 13-year-old child, including explicit videos and images of himself. Bryant was asked by the group if he intended on meeting up with the girl and if he was aware that she was 13, both of which he answered yes to. However, this was not the first instance of Bryant being revealed to be a predator. Previously, in 2020, a separate group of vigilante sting operators posed as a 17-year-old girl and pretended to initiate a meetup with Bryant, who went on to violently threaten them if they released the footage they had to the public. This instance was mostly swept under the rug when it happened, but his second offense blew up in his face. When asked why he felt the need to inappropriately message minors, Bryant responded that he just felt lonely, and that he just needed the interaction. He attempted to prevent Predator Poachers from calling the police by telling them that he was going to get help, to which they responded that he had been caught committing similar acts over half a dozen times, and that his actions were not okay. Following the Predator Poacher sting operation, no formal charges have been laid out, but Bakersfield PD in California have stated that they are investigating the matter. As of this year, despite having his main channel permanently banned, Bryant has been trying to return to YouTube under a different username, though he has never returned to the same level of popularity. Alexander Davies. Aged 18 at the time of his initial arrest, Alexander Davies was caught with an amount of child sexual abuse material that would horrify even seasoned police officers. The self-declared online predator ended up receiving a 9-year suspended sentence after being discovered to have exchanged thousands upon thousands of CSAM images with a ring of pedophiles on a private Discord server. Despite his actions saying anything but, Alexander told police that he saw himself as a father figure to a specific 12-year-old female victim, and also admitted that he found his stash of CSAM therapeutic, that he was addicted to pornography, and that he got excitement from breaking the rules. Usually, breaking the rules involves smoking a little weed or having a drink a year or two early, but apparently not everyone is on the same page. Alexander initially started contacting his 12-year-old victim online and groomed her into sending him explicit material of herself. He was caught and sentenced, but was released on bail, provided he ceased all contact with the girl. However, this didn't deter him. 3 months later, he began contacting her again using another alias, as well as extending his abuse to another 12-year-old girl. Alexander sent explicit content of himself to both girls, ordering them to send him explicit material of themselves back, which he then used to gain access to the inner rings of pedophilic operations. After police investigated his personal devices, they found 478 Category A images, which are the most severe, as well as 247 Category B images, 757 Category C images, and 58 images that were so extremely graphic and disturbing that they couldn't be classified. Alexander ended up pleading guilty to 16 total offenses, including, but not limited to, causing a child to watch an image of sexual activity, engaging in sexual communication with a child, and distributing and possessing indecent images. Jkishi. Demetrius Matson, who goes by the online name of Jkishi, was a popular Minecraft YouTuber back in 2021, but eventually got mixed in with a very shady crowd, to which he would definitely end up belonging in. In 2021, Jkishi was invited by Dream, another popular Minecraft YouTuber, to a private Minecraft server. Little did he know, he would only spend 48 hours in the server before being kicked out, due to evidence surfacing that he was grooming children online. Demetrius, currently 25 years old, was allegedly 18 when the grooming started happening. Victims as young as 12 years old were coming forward, providing screenshots and testimonies from apps like Discord that were very clearly showing Demetrius messaging them sexually, being fully aware that they were underaged. One of his victims went public with evidence to make everyone aware that he had committed heinous child grooming, providing screenshots of their Discord chat log with Demetrius, as well as telling their story. They alleged that they trusted him like family, but the tone of the messages shifted over the years. They stated, "He would frequently ask me for nudes and joke about us sending nudes to each other. When I was 14 and 15, Demetrius and I exchanged explicit pictures. He was 19 and 20. This particular person also admitted that Demetrius would constantly joke about them turning 16 because they would be legal in his state, stating that he wanted to visit them where they lived." Colleen Ballinger. Colleen Ballinger is a creator known for her character named Miranda Sings, a very controversial personality. Miranda shot to star-level popularity on YouTube after joining in 2008, initially imitating bad singers who believed that YouTube would thrust them into the limelight. Colleen's online persona was targeted towards children and teenagers, dressing up in mismatched, frumpy outfits, using immature language, and acting very childishly. On April 29th of 2020, another YouTuber called Adam McIntyre released a video on his channel detailing the extremely inappropriate messages and interactions that happened between the two while he was underaged. Adam alleged that Colleen manipulated him for years, starting when he was just 13 years old. Colleen even sent her own underwear to Adam, as well as sending other items of her clothing to other fans who were also minors at the time. Another person, Becky, at KnowIt'sBex on TikTok, who had a negative experience with Colleen as a minor, went public about her experience at one of Colleen's live events. At Colleen's live shows, she would put on the Miranda Sings persona to run the show, and would have several different bits, one of which she herself titled the porn bit, in which she would call up an audience member who she thought was dressed provocatively and degrade them in a comedic way in front of the entire audience. The person in question that had the issue with Colleen at a particular show was just 16 at the time and had deliberately worn a short romper to be called up for the porn bit. Colleen decided not to call this person up for the porn bit, but instead called her up for the yoga challenge, where she did something that can't be said on YouTube, which left her feeling too vulnerable and unsafe to walk to her car alone later on after the show. Colleen also has a very well-documented and very extensive history of grooming children into attacking people who try to expose her, as well as using her audience as unpaid emotional and unpaid labor, largely in a group chat inappropriately named Colleenie's Weenies. After Adam McIntyre posted his initial call-out video, she sent her fanbase to attack him, flooding his account with negativity, dislikes, and threats. The ultimate downfall of her online career started when she posted a video entitled Hi, in which she makes a mockery of the accusations against her, playing a ukulele and singing about a toxic gossip train, dismissing the highly inappropriate actions that she had taken. With her account still having just under 3 million subscribers, she is somehow still a popular creator, but it's not looking like her account will ever regain the popularity it once had. MadThad0890. MadThad, also known as Homu Homu, is a confirmed pedophile from Michigan who was foolish enough to admit it on Facebook before the evidence was deleted. He was obsessed with a character named Kotonoha Katsura from the anime School Days, which is already a red flag given her age range within the show suggests she was no more than 16. This didn't stop Thad from plastering images of himself across the web, surrounded by his waifu. They're a bit pathetic, but probably didn't raise alarm bells to the average internet goer. He has admitted in a prior video to being aroused by both SA and incest, to the point that he had sometimes wished to have a little sister. If that wasn't bad enough, he also openly talked with family and friends on Facebook as to how he was looking for CSAM, trying to encrypt said CSAM, going so far as to say what he did to himself after looking at the images. Thad's story ends with the FBI being notified and him being arrested with around 300 to 350 CSAM images and videos on his computer. He did attempt and succeed at posting bail, but in his infinite wisdom, he claimed on Twitter that the stupid feds didn't find his backup hard drive. Needless to say, he was arrested again and entered into the sex offender registry. Austin Jones. Austin Jones was a creator on YouTube who originally gained popularity by posting song covers, primarily a cappella. In 2017, Austin was arrested on 2 counts of producing CP, despite convincing 6 underage girls to send him inappropriate photos and videos, as well as convincing 2 teenage girls to send him explicit content, claiming it would prove that they were his biggest fans. Austin pleaded guilty to the 2 counts of producing CP, and ever since his plea argument was made public, we can see that he willingly groomed the 6 girls and managed to convince them to send a total of approximately 59 videos and images, mostly through Facebook and iMessage. Shockingly, along with the 6 girls Austin convinced to send him explicit content, he admitted to messaging at least 30 other underage girls, trying to get them to do the same. After his actions were made public, over 9,000 people signed a petition to get Austin removed from the lineup of that year's Warped Tour, and later on in the year, Austin was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for his crimes. Plasma Master Don. Plasma Master Don was an American YouTuber who was most well known for his screamy, a cappella covers of popular songs. Many people found it endearing to watch an elderly individual sing things like "Don't Stop Me Now" at the top of his lungs. A sweet old man at first glance, Donzel Edward Owens Jr. was discovered to be a registered sex offender long after his death. At 73 years old, he passed away with one of the last uploaded videos being an ironic birthday wish to an 11-year-old boy. 10 days before his death, YouTuber Nick Crowley released a video detailing Donzel's horrific crimes that he had come across on the Morbid Reality subreddit. According to the local sheriff's office of his area, the old man was convicted of essaying an underage boy 5 months prior. After the video was released, Donzel announced that he would be stepping back from singing because his health was quickly declining. 10 days after Donzel posted his last video, an Ohio chapel announced that Donzel had passed away after a lengthy battle with an undisclosed illness and is now buried in an unmarked gravesite, presumably to protect the site from being desecrated. James Charles. James Charles Dickinson, known online as simply James Charles, a makeup and beauty YouTuber, had started posting in 2015. While he is quite popular and retains just over 24 million subscribers at the time of writing, he has faced several controversies over the years. What we're interested in is the grooming claims from approximately 16 different men and boys, 10 of which are reported as underage. In 2021, James released a video where he addresses 2 of these claims. James admits he sent sexually charged messages to these young boys, but he denies any wrongdoing because they apparently lied about their ages, which James neglected to verify. James also admitted that he was reckless about checking the boys' age on their other social media pages because he was desperate for a relationship, even saying on Logan Paul's podcast, Impulsive, that he just doesn't find older men attractive and that he would willingly date an 18-year-old despite being in his 20s at the time. Aside from inappropriately messaging young boys, several straight men also came forward about inappropriate behavior that James showed towards them, pressuring them into suggestive and sexual activities, despite the fact that he was fully aware of their sexuality, using his money and influence to attempt to get what he wanted. Jimbop. Starlet Zhao, known on the internet as Jimbop, was a former Minecraft YouTuber who was exposed and convicted as a predator in 2016. Starlet committed multiple crimes against one of his young female fans, who he was totally aware was only 14 years of age at the time of their interactions. According to the investigation undertaken by the FBI, Starlet deliberately talked to the child in a sexual manner over text, voice, and video chats. In footage that was reportedly taken by the minor's parents, he asked her to do disturbing things on camera. Before the victim's parents reported their child's inappropriate relationship with Starlet to the police, they had started noticing changes in their daughter's behavior. She was frequently on call with Starlet for extended periods of time, as well as buying lingerie that she wouldn't normally wear, even going so far as to wear a locket around her neck with a picture of Starlet's face on it. All of this behavior was no doubt egged on by Starlet, whose manipulative personality would absolutely thrive on such a thing happening. As of 2025, it is unknown if Starlet is still in custody, but what we do know is that he hasn't posted anything to his YouTube channel in nearly a decade. Yandere Dev. Alexander Mahan, aka Yandere Dev or Yandev, is the creator behind the now infamous Yandere Simulator game, which began in 2014. He became a meme online for many reasons, but our primary focus today is an accusation that he was grooming an underage fan of his game. He released a 15-minute video to YouTube talking about the claims, in which he denied the grooming, but admitted to talking about sexual things when he knew the fan was only 16 years old. In a stunning show of hypocrisy, Alexander tried to apologize for his actions, but said that he didn't intend to abuse or start a romantic or sexual relationship with the minor. Bit of an odd way to go about that, but sure. Alexander also tried to claim that the conversations with the minor turned sexual because he, in his mid-30s, had deteriorated mentally, and that he didn't see any issues with being friends with a minor at his age, because when he was a teenager, he also had friends in their 20s and 30s, and he went so far as to say that the victim was coached into incriminating him, comparing the victim coming out about the abuse to an FBI sting operation. Not much else is known about the case to this day. Despite there being no indication of Yandere Simulator ever being released, there was also no record of Alexander facing legal repercussions for his actions. Because of what Alexander did, several people who were collaborating with him on Yandere Simulator stepped back from the project, and after 11 years, the game, as well as its creator, will likely never see the spotlight again. Onision. Originally uploading videos to the internet starting in 2003, Gregory started getting famous on YouTube in 2009 when his song, Banana Song, I'm a Banana, went astronomically viral. Ironically, in 2014, Gregory revealed that he and his sisters were raised in a rural area by their mother, after it was revealed that their father was a pedophile. Gregory's YouTube content has pretty much always been a topic of concern, given that one of the longest-running prevalent series on his channel was of him receiving photos of women and girls that watched his videos and rating them on a scale of 1 to 10 based on their looks, being extremely judgmental in the process. These particular videos were under fire for more reasons than just that, because it seemed that Gregory was not too worried about verifying the true ages of the people submitting the photos. Despite his judgmental nature and extremely rude videos, the downfall truly began when investigative journalist and TV personality Chris Hansen began investigating him, following up on a slew of accusations made against Gregory and his partner Kai by an ex-partner of theirs, Canadian musical artist Shiloh Hoganson. Accusations were also made against Gregory and Kai by a minor named Sarah, who had only just turned 14 when she started communicating with the two. When Sarah was 15, she was invited by Gregory and Kai to stay at their home in Washington, and shockingly, when Sarah was 16, her mother granted power of attorney over her to the couple. She proceeded to live with the two periodically over the next 3 years, where she says that she felt like a toy to them. While Gregory denied doing anything with Sarah before she turned 18, he admitted to sleeping with her after her 18th birthday, despite him being in his mid-30s at the time, and even tried to say that she was the one who pressured him into it. To this day, Gregory's main channel is still accessible on YouTube, but it has fallen to under 2 million subscribers. And looking at his more recent activity on news sources, Patreon, and more, his mental state is declining, and he won't be making a return to the spotlight anytime soon. DJ Academics. On to yet another disgraced streamer, Livingston Allen, aka DJ Academics, started out his online career as just an everyday, active user on a multitude of hip-hop-based forums. When he first appeared on YouTube, he made reaction content, filmed his university DJ gigs, and more. He quickly grew to become a popular streamer. However, popularity, admiration, and an online platform were not enough for Livingston. In July of 2020, he went live on Twitch and proceeded to have a tantrum, making extremely misogynistic remarks about American model Chrissy Teigen after she reportedly sneak dissed him. He swore at her multiple times, going on to also insult her looks for no reason. But we're here to discuss his most recent and most disgusting acts. In early January this year, Livingston was live on Twitch when he began asking extremely inappropriate questions to one of his moderators, who was only 15 years old. A little odd to have such a young person as a mod, but I digress. Livingston brought other creators into this horror show, primarily fellow Twitch streamer Plaqueboy Max, who goes by the legal name of Maxwell. Live on stream, he asked the 15-year-old boy very disturbing sexual questions. After the gross and disturbing conversation happened on a public live stream, people began to speak out about Livingston's actions, and he started losing followers en masse, even garnering the negative attention of artist Meek Mill. Meek made a plea to parents on his social media pages, telling them to get on their children's phones and block Livingston's account so that their children were not at risk of being groomed by him. Cody Ko. Cody Ko, one of the initial superstars back in the days of Vine, is now a YouTube creator. Back when the now 34-year-old was 25 years old, he had an ongoing communication with the then 17-year-old Tana Mojo. Despite Tana being under the age of consent in their state at the time, as well as Cody being made aware of the fact by fellow creator Gabby Hanna during Playlist Live, he still actively pursued the underaged Tana. Tana was roughly a week away from turning 25, the same age that Cody was when this whole debacle really started. She stated on episode 88 of her podcast, Cancelled, that she had hooked up with Cody at the age of 17 and that it all took place after the events of Playlist Live, which meant that Cody was well aware of her age, but that he just didn't care. In the podcast, Tana went on to state that she educated herself and became fully aware that Cody had committed a crime and that it wasn't just crazy tea. Despite Tana apparently trying to tell people about her experience of statutory rape for several years, nothing really happened and Cody went on without consequence. That is, until after the revelation of Cancelled episode 88. Roughly a month after the episode aired, YouTuber D'Angelo Wallace released a video called An Unfortunate Conversation About Cody Ko, in which they describe what Tana had said about the assault, as well as analyze the evidence and the situation at hand. A short while after D'Angelo's video was released and went viral, TMG Studios, being a studio led by Cody and one of his friends named Noel, released a statement saying that Cody would no longer be operating in the day-to-day operations of the studio. They didn't say whether or not he would be leaving the studio altogether, nor did they actually address the allegations that were brought against him. To this day, Cody posts actively, but I find it very hard to believe that he'll ever be as popular as he once was. Call Me Carson. YouTuber Call Me Carson, who I'll refer to as Carson King, is a now 26-year-old man who got caught grooming one of his underage fans when he was 19 and the victim was 17. Now, a lot of people might say something like, well, that's only a 2-year difference, it's not that big a deal, but we need to remember, Carson was an already very popular creator at this point, and the victim was one of his fans, which creates a massive imbalance of power and ends up making informed, enthusiastic consent from the younger person not possible. After Carson's victim went public with her accusations, YouTuber Keemstar released a video interviewing 2 of Carson's former collaborators to get their perspective on the subject. Apparently, these 2 specific members of the Lunch Club group were aware that Carson had inappropriately messaged a minor, but did absolutely nothing to stop it or remedy the situation. They were criticized for this, obviously, but went on to say that they were told this crazy thing and didn't want to make a rash judgment. However, in a rare turn of events, one of the other members of the Lunch Club did actually report Carson to the authorities. Mere hours after Keemstar's video went live, former member of the Lunch Club, Charlie Dalgleish, aka Slimesicle, made a statement about the phone call that led to Carson's downfall. During a group call in early 2020, he admitted to several people that he had exchanged nudes with someone he already knew was only 17 years old. As soon as he heard this, he reported Carson to the authorities and immediately separated himself from the Lunch Club. Charlie also said that he was asked over and over again why he didn't make a public statement about the situation when it was actively happening, to which he responded, "For all those asking why I did not speak publicly about these issues at the time, this is not drama. This is an alleged felony involving a child. As soon as I knew about this, I took every step to protect the unnamed victim and report the information I had to authorities." After Keemstar's video, Charlie's statement, and the involvement with the authorities, Carson's channel has since lost over 120,000 subscribers, and he will never again be a part of the Lunch Club. Minilad. Minilad, or Craig Thompson, is a YouTuber who started out online in 2011 with gaming content, playing things like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty. He gained traction thanks to his editing style and absurd sense of humor, eventually collaborating with other popular gaming YouTubers, such as Vanoss Gaming and H2O Delirious. Almost 10 years later, in 2020, he would be publicly accused of sexting several underage girls, 2 of which were brave enough to go public with the abuse he put them through in 2016 and 2017 when they were still young teenagers, and Craig was in his mid-20s. Initially denying everything and saying that the stories were taken out of context, he also attempted to say that he had never inappropriately contacted any of his fans, let alone underaged ones. The 2 victims that came forward, who go by the names Ash and Holly, also warned everyone that Craig tried to manipulate them into doing what he said by weaponizing his mental illness, effectively silencing them in the process. Eventually, Craig made an apology video. In this video, he says that he knows he made mistakes and hurt people with his actions. Despite this, as well as Craig stating that he would learn from his mistakes and be better, people were understandably outraged. After he released his apology video, he took a break from all social media accounts, which was apparently to take care of his mental health. Going against the apparent wishes of his PR team, Craig went into detail about his supposed relationships with Holly and Ash. He told the audience that Holly was one of his Twitch mods who he had known since roughly 2013, and that he met Ash through mutual friends also on Twitch. He said that he started talking to both of the girls on Snapchat, initially keeping their conversations entirely platonic, before turning the topic of conversation to a much darker place. He said that his actions were selfish, and that he wasn't thinking about the repercussions at the time, and he wished he could take it all back. Far too little, far too late. In a truly shocking turn, a certain number of people were willing to forgive Craig for what he had done, despite the very damning evidence against him. They appeared to accept his apology, completely ignoring exactly how traumatizing online grooming can be to young adolescents. As of this year, Ash and Holly have seemingly not responded to Craig's apology video, and his fanbase has remained at a level that is comparatively so low it could be used as a limbo bar. Zoe Laverne. Zoe Laverne Pemberton was extremely popular on Musical.ly, gaining even more traction on her channel when the app transitioned into the TikTok we all know and tolerate. Posting videos of her lip-syncing, dancing, and later exploring comedic content, Zoe has gone through more than her fair share of controversies. The most disgusting and career-damaging, however, happened in 2020. Over the course of several months, a then 19-year-old Zoe had developed a sick relationship with then 13-year-old Connor Joyce. Zoe claimed that the two had steadily become best friends, despite her being a legal adult and Connor not even being old enough to be in high school, let alone drive a car or give consent. A video ended up being leaked to the public showing Zoe and the child sharing a moment. We'll leave it at that. All this despite being in a 3-year relationship with fellow TikTok star and legal adult Cody Orlov at the time. On October 24th, just a few days before the video of Zoe and Connor surfaced, private messages between one of Zoe's former friends and her ex-boyfriend Cody were made public. The messages revealed that Zoe's friend had removed Zoe from her life, stating, "I left because of her interactions with Connor. They got very intense and it's something I do not stand by whatsoever. It's pedophilia." After the video went viral, Zoe and Connor supposedly cut contact, according to Zoe herself. Zoe also said that she didn't groom Connor, and that she would never do something like that because she was apparently fully aware that he was just a child. She tried to excuse her actions by saying that they were both in a dark place when they initiated contact, which we all know is a pathetic excuse. Zoe's mother went on to defend her daughter against the severe backlash she was facing online, saying that anybody can reach over and kiss somebody, they're best friends, as well as, "This needs to stop, guys, why are you doing this?" How any mother could support their child after seeing evidence of them being a pedophile, I will never know. To this day, Zoe's actions are still very fresh in the minds of the public, and it's highly unlikely she'll be the star of TikTok ever again. Amos Yee. Amos Yee Pangsang, a former YouTuber who was known on the platform for his edgy comedic content. Taking inspiration from creators like Shane Dawson, the future that Amos set himself up for was hardly unexpected. Winning 2 awards at First Film Festival in 2011 and later being cast in a Singaporean film called We Not Naughty, Amos has been no stranger to being both in front of and behind the camera. However, in 2014, he dropped out of school at the age of 16, drastically impacting his future prospects. In late 2017, he would go on to flee his home in Singapore, hoping to settle down in Chicago of the US, to escape the memory of spending 6 weeks in prison due to him making Islamophobic remarks. This did not go to plan, however, because Amos had been evading the Singaporean police, who were hot on his tail after he neglected to sign up for mandatory military service, which is highly illegal in his home country. After spending 9 months in an immigration detention center, Amos was granted asylum in the US by a judge, citing the excessively strict laws in Singapore. As of 2017, Amos began uploading disturbing videos onto one of his YouTube channels. Amos stated on multiple occasions across multiple videos that pedophilia should not be stigmatized, and a lot of stuff that I can't repeat here. In response to these claims and opinions, swarms of people flooded Amos's videos and DMs, debunking all of his baseless claims, even going so far as to send him death threats. Amos was scheduled to give a talk at Harvard, but the event was canceled only 2 days after its advertisement due to the relentless backlash that the school faced due to having a known pedophile as a paid guest speaker. Amos was also forcibly removed from one of his friends' homes by CPS, who were concerned about him being there due to foster children living in the home. His YouTube channels would eventually be deleted, obviously for violating YouTube's guidelines. In June of 2019, Amos, aged 21 at the time, started talking to a 14-year-old girl on Twitter who went by the name of Lola Map Hunter. Lola told him multiple times that she was only 14, but sadly that didn't stop him. He went on to groom her, making her believe they were in an established relationship where they exchanged photos, despite him being a fully grown adult and Lola barely being in her teenage years. Eventually, they broke up, and Amos proceeded to stalk and harass Lola, even after she both asked and demanded that he leave her alone. Later on, in August of 2020, Amos was arrested by police and charged with possession and solicitation of CP. Much to the shock of the public, 16 other charges were brought against him, which were eventually dismissed in exchange for a guilty plea deal. Amos was sentenced to permanently have his name on the sex offender registry and only 6 years in prison, but with nobody around him to pay off his $1 million bail, it looks like he'll be serving out his sentence exactly where he belongs. Buddy Haynes. Buddy Haynes, aka The Buddy, is a former TikToker from the app's early days, back in 2018. Even after extensive searching, not much else is known about the now 32-year-old's personal life, besides what he may have shown on camera. Shortly after he started gaining popularity on TikTok in 2018, a young woman who asked to only be known as Liz W. came forward, saying that she had evidence that the then 25-year-old Buddy had been grooming a 14-year-old girl over Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok, with the possibility of him having more victims, which hasn't yet been confirmed. Liz started out simply collecting creepy TikToks that she found so that she could keep an eye out for potential predators. She posted a video that she found on Buddy's account, where he lip-synced to the song Good Girls, Bad Guys by notoriously controversial band Falling in Reverse. Suspicious that he may be creeping on underage girls, Liz was then messaged by one of her followers, who asked, "Hey, I'm 14. Do you want me to find out if he's a predator or not?" That message led to, in October of that year, Buddy Haynes sexually messaging a girl he knew was underage on Instagram. The teen who messaged Liz goes by her screen name of Cherry Pop Cosplays, who I'll refer to as Cherry for the rest of the story. After everything happened with Buddy, Cherry would go on to do an interview with BuzzFeed News, of course, with her mother present. She said that the conversation started out as simply talking about cosplay, exchanging ideas and such. But then, Buddy started sending her videos of himself, licking and biting his lips, as well as kissing the camera. Cherry said that this made her extremely uncomfortable, but she wanted to gather as much evidence as possible to expose him, so she continued to message him. Much in line with Buddy's track record of being creepy and not taking a hint, the messages began to ramp up in regards to their intensity and inappropriate content after Cherry told him she was only 14, with Buddy sending several videos of himself shirtless, saying that he wished he could be in a relationship with her and asking if she found him attractive. Liz and Cherry ended up reporting Buddy to both TikTok and the FBI, which sadly did not do much. His account remained untouched on TikTok despite all the allegations and evidence against him. He was visited by the FBI, who only ended up asking him a few questions before reportedly saying to him, "Look, we've got complaints," and "Hey, look, this doesn't look good right now. Maybe it's best if you take a month or two off." Buddy ended up deleting his own social media accounts a few months after the whole debacle, but sadly, TikTok never responded to either Liz or Cherry, and no criminal charges were brought against him. Swirlface. Swirlface, later identified as Canadian-born English teacher and aspiring Catholic priest Christopher Paul Neal, is a convicted sex offender who was arrested back in 2007, 3 years after a massive horde of CSAM was uncovered, affecting over a dozen young boys in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand. The moniker of Swirlface was given to Christopher, who was unidentified at the time because he used the Photoshop effect twirl to obscure his face. Luckily for the boys, unluckily for Christopher, German federal-level computer experts were able to restore the obscured face in the over 200 photos. Over 350 people contacted the authorities about the newly uncovered face, 5 of whom identified the man as Christopher. On October 19th of 2007, police arrested Christopher in Thailand, where he had attempted to flee after learning that he had been identified as the man in the photos. They had managed to locate Christopher after tracking the 25-year-old Thai man that he had hired to be his partner in crime, taking young boys from internet cafes to be abused and photographed. Christopher was sentenced to 39 months of imprisonment in Thailand and given a $1,780 fine. And after being released on September 12, 2012, he flew back to Canada, where he was swiftly arrested by Vancouver police. While he was released soon after on very strict conditions, he certainly didn't learn his lesson, because he was arrested again just under a year for breach of recognizance, which was a result of police officers finding CSAM on both his laptop and cell phone. Due to his latest arrest, Christopher was originally sentenced to 5.5 years in prison, with it later being reduced to 15 months, merely a fraction of his original sentence. In March of 2017, Christopher was released and allowed to live among the people of Vancouver, being under very strict conditions the whole time, including contact with minors in person or on the internet, and possessing or accessing any electronic device or from getting any other person to do so on his behalf. Mark Dodds. Mark Dodds, who is currently 38 years of age, is a convicted pedophile and abuser. He carried out some truly disgusting acts over Snapchat, victimizing at least 9 girls as young as 9 years old, both in his home country of England as well as the United States. He pretended to befriend these children, digitally disguising himself as a 15-year-old boy, going so far as to convince most of them that he was their boyfriend. Mark's first victim was a 13-year-old girl in the UK who began messaging over Snapchat in 2019. Mark managed to coerce the young girl into sending him an explicit photo of herself and went on to threaten her with releasing the picture to all of her friends if she didn't perform acts on camera during a video call for him. Luckily, the girl's mother found the messages that he was sending her and told him to leave her daughter alone. Sadly, this didn't deter Mark, who threatened the mother and viciously mocked her, going on to release the photo to, supposedly, hundreds of local children. Paul Cleesby, the man presiding over Mark's court case, stated that Mark was controlling, manipulative, and even sadistic, which was extremely obvious when you saw the evidence. Mark ignored the children when they begged to be allowed to stop, continuing to tell them to show him more and more invasive sexual acts. Whenever the children were brave enough to attempt to say no to his demands, Mark blackmailed them, saying that the other photos they sent him would be released to hundreds of people, including their friends and family. The mother of Mark's first victim, the 13-year-old girl, stated to police that her daughter's life had been irreparably damaged by Mark's actions. Her once bubbly and cheerful daughter was reduced to a nervous wreck, barely able to leave the house without breaking down. It was later revealed in court that Mark threatened to burn down the girl's house and kill her family if she didn't keep talking to him, going so far as to give her contact information to other pedophiles, causing her to be harassed even further. Mark initially denied all the allegations against him, but was found guilty by a jury after just an 11-minute deliberation. The court recorder said that Mark showed breathtaking arrogance. The presiding judge said that Mark was highly dangerous and self-obsessed, and Mark was eventually sentenced to 20 years behind bars. Frankly, far less than he deserves. Alexander McCartney. One of the most prolific offenders on this list, Alexander McCartney, currently in his mid-late 20s, is a prime example of horror and depravity. Starting prior to his first arrest in 2016, Alexander had been relentlessly abusing young girls online, one of the most saddening instances being his abuse and blackmail of 12-year-old girl Cimarron Thomas. Serial catfishing abuser, Alexander would use apps like Snapchat, pretending to be a teenage girl to lure in victims, with a shocking average age of only 10 to 12. The youngest child involved only being 4 years old. After he received images from the young girls, he would use them to blackmail the girls into sending even more, often sharing the images he got with fellow pedophiles. Alexander would make numerous fake profiles on a multitude of different devices, eventually soliciting images from children in over 30 countries, including America, Scotland, Ireland, and New Zealand, with his estimated total count of victims being 3,500. Alexander posed a massive danger to children, many of whom said absolutely nothing to their parents and or guardians in fear that he would track them down and harm them or their families. This led to families being shocked and terrified when police came to their door, informing them that their child was the victim of horrific, untold abuse by a monster across the sea. In the worst possible turn of events, Alexander's abuse eventually became too much for young Cimarron Thomas. A usually bubbly and loving child who loved to play the violin, she lived in West Virginia with her mother, father, and siblings, including her 9-year-old younger sister. In 2018, Alexander used a fake Snapchat account to message Cimarron, initially pretending to be another girl. After a while, he coerced her into sending him an explicit photo. After that photo was sent, he kept her online for nearly 2 hours, demanding more pictures, but Cimarron eventually blocked him, attempting to get on with her life. 4 days later, Alexander contacted Cimarron on a new account, demanding her to involve her 9-year-old sister in the explicit content she was forced to send him. Feeling scared and hopeless, she sent a final message saying she couldn't go on. A few minutes later, her little sister heard a noise and went into their parents' room, where she found something no child should ever see. Sadly, about 1.5 years later, Cimarron's dad also passed away. He was still heartbroken and didn't know everything his daughter had gone through. During sentencing, the prosecution stated that they physically couldn't fit the 3,500 counts of abuse on their paperwork, but they were able to tie Cimarron's death to Alexander's involvement and abuse. And so, the monster from Northern Ireland was found guilty on 185 counts, including manslaughter, and was sentenced to a minimum of 20 years in prison. Daniel Lee. A resident of Wallsend in the UK, now 30-year-old Daniel Lee is another example of exactly how far the influence and abuse of pedophiles can spread, thanks to the recent phenomena of the internet. In the offending period between January 21st and August 2022, Daniel used Snapchat in a way that we all are, sadly, not shocked by at this point. He created a number of fake accounts on the app, lying about his age and identity, pretending to be a fellow young teen to solicit inappropriate images from teenagers, who ranged in age from 12 to 16. Daniel also attempted to bribe several of the teens to keep silent, telling them that he would send them things like money or gift cards. This demonstrated that he knew what he was doing was wrong. Occasionally, Daniel would manipulate his way into having an emotional relationship with the children before soliciting inappropriate photos from them, other times having conversations that were very short-lived before becoming inappropriate. Daniel's ruin came later on, when pictures of one of his victims, a 15-year-old girl, were posted on Twitter. The National Crime Agency, the NCA, received a tip about the public abuse of the girl and visited her home to investigate. She told police that random men on the internet were trying to pressure her into selling inappropriate photos of herself, and that the harassment was greatly upsetting her. The police were able to examine her phone, identifying one of her primary abusers as Daniel Lee. Shortly after Daniel was identified as one of the abusers of the initial victims, the police identified a second victim, and everything began unraveling from there. They managed to identify 7 total victims who were groomed by Daniel, while there was evidence that he had abused up to 30 children, spanning over Germany, Denmark, America, the UK, and more. In the end, on October 14th of 2024, Daniel pled guilty in front of a court of 45 offenses related to his actions, including several counts of inciting a child to engage in sexual activity. He ended up being sentenced to only 4 years and 5 months in prison, but luckily was forced to enter into the sex offender registry, as well as being issued a sexual harm prevention order. Jacob Lozano. Jacob Moisey Lozano, a now 24-year-old man from Florida in the United States, is the first entry on this list whose primary method for luring in victims was an online game, Fortnite. Having no previous criminal record, Jacob's crimes were truly shocking to both his home state of Florida, as well as to California, Arizona, and Georgia, the home states of only some of his other victims. Feeling emboldened by the lack of consequences after posting CSAM on Snapchat in 2022, Jacob started targeting young boys over Fortnite. He would talk to them, making them feel special, before moving over to Discord to solicit images from them, his youngest victim being only 10 years old. In early 2025, one of the victim's parents was finally made aware of the abuse of her son, who was only 11 years old. The boy's grandmother walked into his room before school one morning and checked the boy's computer. She got in touch with the boy's mother. Luckily, the boy's mother was able to handle the situation in the best way possible, locking down all of his devices and contacting the police, who managed to find evidence of everything that Jacob had subjected the boy to. After the police combed over the child's devices for information, they managed to identify Jacob, then proceeded to identify at least 5 other boys who had fallen victim to his manipulation. According to the first boy's father, this was so grotesque, so over the top, so sexual in nature, it didn't even cross my mind this is something we would have to deal with. Jacob was eventually extradited from Florida on a grand jury warrant for 14 counts of child sexual exploitation, which resulted in him being sentenced to 32 years in prison, with lifetime probation as a level 3 sex offender. Martin Cole. Martin Cole, a 32-year-old man, has been named as every parent's worst nightmare by the BBC. Creeping around on the darkest corners of the internet, Martin ended up collating some of the most disgusting images the jury had ever encountered. Martin's only personal victim was a young girl, aged only 11 or 12. Over several months, he groomed her on Snapchat, offering to send the girl money and gifts if she sent him any kind of CSAM of herself. This sick behavior went on for so long that Martin ended up sending the girl nearly £2,000 over nearly 100 installations. He even sent her clothing as gifts, going so far as to abuse her on Christmas Eve. Eventually, the girl was so distressed because of Martin's behavior that she said she would move away and block him. Martin, being the monster he had proven to be, said that he knew where she lived and even hinted that he would hunt her down and hurt her if she left and stopped sending him material. Martin's actions affected the girl greatly, her parents stating that he invaded our home. He invaded my daughter and stole her innocence. He invaded me as a mother, and he invaded our lives. Aside from the girl that Martin targeted directly, there was a pedophile's dreamland worth of CSAM found on 2 cell phones and several other devices belonging to him. Nearly 6,000 images and videos were found on his devices, with the youngest of the victims being only babies. Nearly 2,000 of these files were later classified as Category A, which are the most serious, dangerous, and damaging form of CSAM. When Martin appeared in court for sentencing, he said that he didn't really know why he offended. He ended up being sentenced to prison for 7 years and 3 months and a permanent registration on the Sex Offenders Registry, with Judge Nicholas Barker saying this of him: "In many ways, you are every parent's worst nightmare, lurking in the shadows of the internet, preying on children in such a way that the parent has no knowledge of you or what you were up to." Operation Open House. Operation Open House took place in New Jersey in September of 2018 over a course of 5 days, a collaborative affair put together by task forces such as the Internet Crimes Against Children, ICAC, the Department of Criminal Justice, DCJ, and more. A multi-agency affair, Operation Open House would end up arresting a total of 24 men, including a 47-year-old police sergeant, Richard Conte, who believed he was meeting up with a 15-year-old girl. During his online talks with the girl, he pretended to be only 19, and he showed up to the meeting place with condoms in his pocket. Some of the other men arrested included a registered sex offender, a firefighter, college students, and even a nurse. One of the offenders went so far as to travel all the way from his home in the Bronx, an entirely different state, and over an hour-and-a-half drive. New Jersey's Attorney General, Gudbir Grewal, was disgusted by what the 24 men had done and went on to make some very strongly worded statements, with the action to back them up. He also spoke to parents, begging them to monitor their kids' internet access, seeing as these 24 monsters were able to reach who they believed to be kids through messaging apps like Kik, Snapchat, Whisper, and more. In a hilarious instance of karmic justice, several of the men were arrested by the very officers that played the decoys they were talking to. One of the offenders in particular, Robert Lisicki of Metuchen, New Jersey, was in his early 50s when he was arrested, more than old enough to be the child's parent. Robert ended up taking a plea deal to avoid having to go to trial, receiving a measly 3-year prison sentence. He will, however, remain a registered sex offender under parole supervision for the rest of his life. During Robert's trial, Acting Attorney General Andrew Bruck said, "The sentence sent a message. If you prey on children, you will go to prison." In the end, all 24 of the defendants were charged with second-degree luring, with nearly all of them facing additional charges, such as attempted sexual assault on a minor and attempted debauching morals of a child. Shane Penzak. In 2023, a 45-year-old man from Florida would be found guilty of the charges that will always get you into hot water in prison: sexual offenses against a child. Shane Penzak of Northport, Florida, may not be as prolific as some other entries on this list, but make no mistake, he still made a significant and horrendous impact. In a move all too familiar to law enforcement, Shane used a pseudonym online, going by the gamer tag Xbox Diamond Girl 2683, and pretended to be a teenage girl in order to lure in a child. Through Discord and Roblox, Shane targeted a 15-year-old boy, pretending he was a young girl of a similar age, eventually enticing the child to send him inappropriate photos of himself, even bribing him with online gift cards. After the initial messages were sent, he used the images against the boy, blackmailing him into sending even more, the acts becoming more and more vulgar as the abuse progressed. After the unnamed boy's parents reported Shane's actions to the police, the initial investigation began. Looking into the Xbox Diamond Girl 2683 account, police officers were horrified to find that the initial victim was not the only one. Looking through the digital footprint that Shane left behind, investigators found that Shane had been operating under many different usernames, grooming several children, and hoarding dozens of images of CSAM. Pleading guilty to 8 total felonies, Shane was found guilty of several different charges, including possession of CP and lewd or lascivious battery. The judge presiding over the case, the Honorable Thomas Krug, sentenced Shane to 13 years in Florida's Department of Corrections, followed up by 15 years of sex offender probation so that the law can keep eyes on him, ensuring that children will no longer be harmed by him. Peter Scully. Peter Scully is perhaps the most infamous person on this list. Once known to the public as a regular Melbourne-based family man with a wife and 2 children, the depth of his crimes could fill a whole book. He was initially involved in a fraud case in Australia that led to him fleeing to the Philippines to escape his $2 million debt. It was here that Scully would do what is perhaps for most of us an unthinkable way to start crawling out of debt. He started a website on the dark web entitled No Limits Fun and began producing content. Whether it was out of sociopathy, sadism, sexism, or pedophilia is unclear. Scully's interviews make him seem arrogant but resistant to confrontation, and he answered any questions about his crimes quite vaguely. His modus operandi was to approach poor families in the Philippines and offer to adopt their girls. Some of these desperate families would agree to give up their young children, believing that they would be fed, housed, and educated on Scully's dime. Scully would bring the girls to his home and keep them in his tight, stuffy attic, which was weirdly lined with panels from Archie comics across the wall. It's unclear how many girls Scully and his female accomplices would victimize, but his most infamous crime was the creation of the video known as Daisy's Destruction. This video was spread so far, it leaked off of the deep web and onto the surface web. Footage of the trailer was often seen on social media and email chains, which promised that the footage contained a child's mental ruin. Her body will be ravaged, her dignity stolen. I won't go into any details of the content, but Daisy was just 18 months at the time. The other victims in the video were 11 and 12. Scully, Carmian Alvarez, and Liesl Margallo filmed themselves abusing the girls for the video, which was sold as pay-per-view on his darknet site and spread far beyond that. Scully also later filmed a snuff film where he murdered another young woman, only identified as Cindy. Peter Scully and his accomplices were arrested after 2 girls they had kidnapped from a mall and chained to their attic for 4 days in order to abuse managed to escape. At this point, Filipino police were already on high alert as Daisy's destruction had shaken the whole world to the point multiple countries were investigating its origin. Scully and his accomplices were arrested in 2014 and they were sentenced to life in prison. Earlier this year in March, Peter Scully and his accomplice, Alvarez, apparently tried to appeal their life sentence, arguing what they'd done didn't constitute trafficking as they were making the videos for their own pleasure. The existence of No Limits Fun clearly debunked that, and their life sentences were upheld. These people ruined countless lives. What they did to that literal baby and the girl they killed can't even be repeated. They are perhaps not just the most disturbing internet predators, but the most evil people who ever lived.